The night air of Old Town pressed close with the salty tang of the whispering sound. Yet within the citadel's westernmost library, the candles guttered thin and bright against approaching dawn. Samwell bent over the splintered oak desk that had served uncounted novices before him, its surface scored by 3 centuries of quills and anxious fingertips. Parchment curled before him in uneven piles, transcriptions of royal proclamations, dusty copies of Blackfire-era charters, and, most prized of all, a moth-eaten ledger of ship manifests confiscated from the docks at King's Landing during the reign of Beeler the Blessed. Sam's own hand shook with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration as he traced the ink, matching names that should never have appeared together. Behind him, through a cracked window, the distant bells of the starry sept tolled prime, but still he read, unwilling to concede even a moment to sleep. Men called him studious, plump, gentle, rarely dangerous. Yet in the pools of lamplight he felt the faintest spark of peril, as though one false breath might scatter these fragile pages and reveal the treason they concealed. A cartographer's marked beside a Tycho Nestoris charter, a sigil half-smudged in the margin of an oath sworn by Sir Duncan the Tall, whispers upon whispers that converged on a single point. Lies. Old lies. Grand lies. Stretched across reigns and wars and marriages. So clever that the 7 kingdoms themselves had grown around their bones like scar tissue. Discovering them felt like pressing a thumb upon a half-healed wound. The realm winced without knowing why. When the 7th bell chimed, he forced himself to gather the scrolls into a leather folio. The day promised lectures on ravenry, then a practical in alchemy. Queer green flames and all, but Sam had long since coaxed the Alchemists' Guild into trusting him with their secrets. What he needed now was a plausible excuse to visit the Ravenry Tower, where Grand Maester Benefar stored sealed copies of Crown correspondence. Benefar himself, frail as parchment and half-blind, still retained a wary sharpness around the eyes. Sam must seem dutiful, harmless, almost invisible. He tightened his belt, smoothed his robes, and wished, not for the first time, that he possessed even a sparrow's portion of Arya Stark's stealth. Outside, dawn unfurled across the reach, gold fire rippling over tiled roofs and the slow swirl of mist on the Honeywine. Apprentices hurried along covered walkways, bells clinking against metal collars. Sam exchanged nods, careful to hide the quiver of his smile. It had been 3 years since he first shuffled through these courts, a self-exiled son of Hornhill, with little more than books and hopes. In that time he had forged chains of yellow brass and copper and tin, had argued philosophy with archmaesters, and shared mulled ale with stable boys. Yet the chain he coveted most, the Valyrian steel link that marked mastery of the higher mysteries, still eluded him, not because he lacked knowledge, but because such a link demanded more than wisdom. It required daring. Serious daring, he reminded himself, stepping onto the spiral stair that wound toward the rookery. The tower loomed, walls slick with morning dew, ravens chorusing in the high recesses. Benefar's chambers occupied the middle level, guarded by nothing more than a worn latch and the old man's pride in his cataloging system. Sam lifted the latch and entered. Inside, shelves surged skyward, each shelf laden with scrolls bound by colored ribbons. The ink smell mingled with musk and guano. A single brazier burned, its coals breathing faint red. He found Benefar at a slanted table, fitting a new wax seal to a rolled parchment. "Grand Maester," Sam said, bowing deeply. "Ah, Tarly," the old man rasped without turning. Another morning, another scroll. They breed like rabbits when a realm is at peace. His thin lips twitched. Peace, Sam thought, was the grandest lie of all. "I wondered," Sam ventured, "if I might assist with the catalog today." The sigillography lecture was cancelled. Archmaester Domeric's gout again. Benefar's quill paused mid-scratch. The blind eye drifted. The cloudy white pupil unnerved most novices, but Sam had learned its language. Suspicion softened into relief. Yes, stack the northern accounts on the 3rd shelf, but mind the old tongue charters. If you undo their ribbons, you'll never sort them back properly. Sam bowed again, heart pounding. The third shelf contained, among other treasures, the sealed letters of Maester Wolkan from Winterfell, sent in the final months before Queen Sansa's coronation ceremony. A cluster of dispatches rumored to speak frankly of lineage disputes. Sam located the bundle, fingers tingling. Wax stamped with the direwolf of House Stark shone dully in the brazier's light. He eased the scroll free, slid it under his robe and replaced the ribbon without a sound. Daring indeed. Hours later, cloistered in his narrow cell, Sam unpeeled the wolf seal. Wolkan's neat, crabbed script unfurled. He wrote of Robert's rebellion, of quiet pardons granted to bastards, of quills dipped in secrecy by maesters who feared swords as much as starvation. Yet one sentence blazed brighter than wildfire. I have reason to believe the boy at the wall, Jon Snow, carries no blood of Lord Eddard. The parchment trembled in Sam's grip. He knew the truth of Jon's birth, had seen it in Bran's green dreams, and felt it beating beneath the dragon's wings at Winterfell. But here, inked by a northern maester, was proof that whispers reached beyond the weirwood net. Proof that the Citadel's chroniclers chose silence. He paced, ragged breaths stirring dust motes. Jon, King Bran the Broken's hand, trusted him. Sansa Queen in the North trusted him. If Sam delivered these findings to the Iron Throne, would it heal or shatter what remained? And what of the other lies woven through the ledger he carried? Trade monopolies disguised as holy alms, letters forging Baratheon lineages, whispers that the faith militant had smothered the last High Septon to hide his Dornish blood. Expose one, and others would unravel. Night descended again before Sam finally slept. Dreamless and cold, the next fortnight crawled. He attended lectures, brewed tinctures, copied ravens, all while his mind roared with revelations. He penned discreet inquiries to Archmaester Ibros, still infirm yet lucid, about procedures for revising Grand Chronicles. He studied the precedents of Grand Maesters removed for bias. Pycelle, Gorman Tyrell, Torhin Manderley. Each had been ousted by kings who feared inconvenient counsel. Sam's path, if he dared tread it, would lead straight into that same peril. But there was also promise, glimmering like sunlight on steel. To become Grand Maester himself, bound to no lie, beholden only to truth. Opportunity arrived disguised as tragedy. Grand Maester Benefar, already weak, succumbed to a chill that settled into his chest. One snow-bitten dawn he failed to rise. A hush rippled through the citadel. For the first time in 2 generations, the choosing of a new Grand Maester lay before the conclave. Candidates paraded their chains, boasted of ravenscraft and healing. Sam watched, silent, as Archmaester Valen, a sly man fond of arbor wine, pressed coin into younger hands. Rumor placed him foremost among hopefuls. That evening, as gulls wheeled above the docks and sunset bled into the honeywine, Sam sought Archmaester Marwyn. The mage rarely attended conclave sessions, preferring smoke-stained laboratories where glass hearts glowed purple over shadow flame. Yet Marwyn wielded influence of a darker sort. Whispers, unorthodox lore, and an uncanny knack for seeing through masks. Sam found him standing atop the roof garden above the scribe's keep, peering across the city as if divining auguries from chimney smoke. Moonlight cut silver paths through the herbs around them. Archmaester, Sam began, I need your backing. Marwyn's chuckle was like gravel sliding down slate. I thought you needed a diet, boy. But speak. I would stand for Grand Maester. The words felt absurd aloud, yet right. Not to chase power. To keep the realm from choking on falsehood. Marwyn turned, one eye gleaming under his hood. You mean to wield truth as a blade? Blunter than Valyrian steel, but more lasting. He stepped closer, sniffed the parchment bundle Sam proffered. Wolkan's hand, aye. And these ship manifests, clever hunting. Sam's pulse hammered. Help me sway the conclave. The mage tapped his bronze chain. They fear me almost as much as dragons. But you, they find harmless. I shall whisper where needed. He laid a heavy hand on Sam's shoulder. Remember, Tarly, friendships dewen secrets breathe. The election dawned under banners of dove-gray fog. In the hall of hallowed voices, candles sputtered as 60 archmaesters filed to their stone seats. Sam stood before them, robe damp with nervous sweat. Valen spoke first, extolling his decades of counsel to minor lords. Sam listened, noting the easy way the man skipped past his years as steward for House Tyrell. When his own turn came, he did not grandstand. "My lords," Sam began, voice steady though he trembled within, "I offer no lineage more illustrious than the land I left behind, no purse wider than my belt. I offer questions. Who profits when oaths are forgotten? Who writes our chronicles? Those who fought, or those who survived? I have found discrepancies in our records, ones that could upend the realm's own understanding of itself." He raised the leather folio, cords loosened. "Choose me, and truth shall be our grant to the crown." Murmurs rustled like dry leaves. Archmaester Valen's smile faltered. The voting began. 7 rounds later, white smoke curled from the brazier. Samwell Tarley, former coward, fat boy, shunned son, was acclaimed Grand Maester. He staggered from the hall, dazed. Marwyn awaited beside a marble balustrade, grin wolfish. The first step taken, now the climb. Within a moon's turn, Sam sailed for King's Landing aboard the cog Honeyhawk. Seas heaved beneath stormy skies. Gulls screamed overhead. Sam spent the voyage hunched in his cabin, organizing scrolls into arguments. Lineage proofs for Queen Sansa's legitimacy. Ledgers exposing bribes funneled through Iron Bank envoys. Correspondences tying Lannister gold to Sparrow uprisings. Each revelation felt heavier than iron, yet he feared letting any one of them slip back into darkness. On the 10th night, a gale swept the deck. Sailors cursed, lashing ropes. Sam emerged, robes snapped by wind, and clutched the rail as black waves towered. In the chaos he felt small, reminded that the truths he carried were but flotsam on a sea of human tempests. Still, he clung to them. Lightning cracked. In its glare he imagined the Red Keep rising ahead, and heard faint echoes of steel upon cobblestone. Hosts of lies forging themselves into crowns. Port of King's Landing greeted them beneath sullen skies. The war-scarred city bore new scabs, half-rebuilt towers, market squares sprouting monuments to peace. Yet charred stones of the old sept still jutted like broken teeth. Sam crossed the city under guard, his chain chiming softly. Small folk stared. Some whispered of dragon's droop, the malady that struck King Aegon II at all. Others cursed taxes. Lies, Sam thought, were not confined to parchment. They lived in rumor's breath. Inside the Red Keep, noble courtiers bowed with stiff smiles. Sir Davos Seaworth embraced Sam warmly, smelling of salt and leather, while Tyrion Lannister offered a curt nod, hands tucked behind his embroidered doublet, like a man guarding secrets of his own. The new throne room was smaller than Erisburned Hall, its high windows letting in shafts of gray. Upon a modest weirwood back seat sat King Bran the Broken, eyes clouded deeper than Benefar's, yet seeing more than any man alive. Beside him, Jon Snow, still refusing titles, wore black wool trimmed in stark gray. His gaze met Sam's, and something unspoken passed. Gratitude, caution, hope. That night Sam dined with the council. Wine flowed, candles fluttered. Queen Daenerys' absence hovered like a chill. They spoke of her rarely, a wound scabbed but sore. Lady Brienne discussed border patrols, Lord Gendry tariffs on river trade. Through it all, Sam listened, tasted each sentence for hidden rot. At last Jon invited him to speak. "Your Grace, my lords," Sam began softly, "I have uncovered irregularities in our archives, false accounts of lineage, manipulated trade pacts, even forged royal orders. These deceptions shape policy still. Before I present them, I must ask, does the Iron Throne truly desire truth?" Silence rolled heavy. Lord Davos' brow furrowed. Tyrion sipped wine, eyes narrowing. Bran spoke at last. "Truth is like a three-eyed raven, Samwell. It perches uninvited on the ramparts and sees what kings wish to hide. Show us." "Live him to us," Sam breathed out, reaching for his folio when the doors banged wide. A herald strode in, cloak spattered with rain. "Forgive the hour, your grace. A raven from High Garden. Archmaester Valen is dead, poison in his wine, and word spreads that forged seals were found in his study." The council erupted in shocked murmurs. Sam's hands trembled. Someone moved faster than ink could dry, tying loose ends with blood. Marwen's warning rang hollow in his ears. "Friendships, die when secrets breathe." John rose, palm resting on the pommel of his sheathed sword. "Grand Maester, are we in danger here?" "Knowledge is danger," Sam whispered, unsure who heard. "We stand upon its edge." That edge grew sharper in the days that followed. Sam settled into the Grand Maester's chambers, an airy suite overlooking Blackwater Bay, yet sleep eluded him. He spent nights refining his treatise on the necessity of candor in the governance of kingdoms, copying passages under false titles to disguise their power. Each morning ravens arrived bearing threats cloaked as courtesy. Lord Mathis Rowan questioning the authenticity of Hornhill's seal. Sir Tyrek Lannister demanding clarification on Westerland's debts. The web tightened. Sam's chain grew heavy on his shoulders, not from links but from consequence. In quiet moments he recalled Gilly's laughter in the sheltered courtyards of Old Town. Little Sam chasing sparrows. He had sent them ahead to Winterfell for safety, telling himself it was precaution. Now he felt the distance like a sword between ribs. Truth may free kingdoms, he mused, but it chains hearts. One rain-slicked dawn, he ascended the Ravengate Tower to send dispatches. The rookery keeper, a youth from Fair Isle, pointed out a barrel perched by the stair, unmarked, smelling faintly of bitumen. Sam frowned, heart thudding. Wildfire? He ordered the guard doubled and had the barrel removed. Tyrion informed, paled visibly. "Someone wished the Grand Maester's tower to burn," he muttered. No sense of historical irony in these assassins. Tyrion and Sam spoke long that night over cups of Arbor Red. The imp listened as Sam spilled fragments of evidence. Valen's bribery, Lannister involvement in sparrow plots, a quiet alliance between Ironbank and certain northern houses to manipulate grain tariffs. Tyrion's laugh was bitter. "Expose every noble lie, and you'll find none left to rule but small folk. They too tell tales, but theirs seldom kill kingdoms." "I'd rather rebuild from ruins than live in rot," Sam replied. Tyrion raised his goblet. "Then let us pray rot burns swiftly." The council convened in closed session a fortnight later, Bran insisting on full hearing of Sam's findings. Lords and ladies packed the chamber, tension coiled. Sam stood at a lectern, parchment stacked high. Sunlight slanted through narrow windows, dust swirling like restless souls. He began with the smallest deceptions. A misallocated tax to repair Storm's End walls. But even that stirred ripples. He unveiled doctored genealogies proving that several Reach bannermen owed fealty to the crown, not Highgarden. Murmurs turned to outcries. Lord Tarley's face reddened. Sam felt the old fear surge, then fade. He had outgrown it. Before he could proceed to the more devastating revelations, a commotion rose beyond the doors. A messenger burst in, panting. "A riot in Cobbler's Square. Faithful denounce the Iron Throne's Maester of Heresies. They bear torches." Bran dismissed the gathering. Guards escorted Sam through secret passages to his chambers, torches flickering. Outside chants rose. "Truth is treason. Down with the fat crow." Stones clattered against shutters. Sam watched from a narrow slit as flames licked a wagon overturned by the mob. Fear threatened to swallow him. He unrolled Wolken's letter again. Jon's true name, Aegon Targaryen, stared back. Would the world burn brighter for knowing? Or would it devour him first? His quill hovered over blank parchment. He began slowly to draft a letter to Sansa Stark, detailing all he had learned and asking for her counsel. Yet, even as he wrote, a shadow crossed the threshold. Grey Worm, commander of the Unsullied, silent as ash. He bowed curtly. "The king requests your presence in the Godswood." Beneath the pale leaves of a transplanted weirwood, Bran waited in his wheeled chair, eyes like distant storms. Night birds called overhead. Sam knelt. "You have gathered truths that threaten to fracture us." Bran said, voice soft yet echoing, as though borne on every leaf. Tell me, friend, do you seek to heal the realm, or to judge it? Sam swallowed. To heal lies fester. I would lance the wound. A wound bleeds when lanced, Bran murmured. Yet perhaps infection kills slower. He raised a hand. Proceed, Samwell, but choose your order. The realm may only bear so much blood at once. Sam bowed deeply, tears pricking. Thank you, your grace. As moonlight silvered the leaves, Sam felt the weight of his task settle anew. Heavy, yes, but no longer impossible. He would expose one lie at a time, craft bomb as well as blade, and trust that truth, once freed, would learn to fly without burning its own wings. He returned to his chambers, rolled fresh parchment, and began again. Not with Jon, not yet, but with the modest lie of a cask of arbor gold diverted from starving villages to gild a minor lord's manse. A small truth, sharp enough to cut, yet not to kill. The first of many steps along a road 5 hours long, perhaps 5 lifetimes, toward a day when crowns might gleam untarnished beneath an honest sun. Word by word, candle by candle, Grand Maester Samwell Tarly wrote. K.K. Grand Maester Samwell Tarly paused only to sip the dregs of cold small beer before he sanded the next line. The parchment smelled of wet wool and candle smoke. The words upon it smelled of trouble. Lord Renifer Foot had diverted 30 barrels of arbor gold, each one marked for famine relief in the Riverlands, to gild a new set whose pews would never seat the hungry. Sam set out the figures plainly, traced the hard journey of each barrel from Old Town Dock to King's Landing Warehouse to the Sunset Road, and ended with 6 neat sentences demanding restitution and public penance. He addressed the missive jointly to King Bran, Queen Sansa, and the Master of Coin, then laid it aside to dry. When the ink turned matte, he affixed the royal seal of the Grand Maester. A book clasped by 7 link-wrought hands, and reached for his sand glass. Dawn hovered, milky white beyond the chamber's lattice. He had been awake 2 nights, yet the ache behind his eyes felt righteous. Across the room, Tyrion Lannister lounged in a velvet chair, size for taller men, boots on the windowsill. You are the only man I know, he said, who believes arithmetic more dangerous than wildfire. Sam smiled wearily. Wildfire burns what we see. A ledger burns what we believe. Poetic, Tyrion mused, sniffing the wine he had brought unasked. You'll have poets murdered for less once this lands. He nodded at the letter. Foot is cousin to half the Reach, and in pocket to what remains of House Hightower. Expect sharpened quills and swords. No. Sam corked his inkpot. Better their swords flash in open daylight than their lies crawl in dark halls. But as he said it, he pictured steel. Thin, bright, final. He pictured Gilly's soft mouth, whispering little Sam to sleep beneath Winterfell's sloped rafters. Courage wavered, fluttered, braced itself. He blew out the candle and tugged his cloak from a peg. Tyrion fell in behind him, limping slightly where an old crossbow bolt had once lodged. They descended the narrow turnpike stair, boot heels knocking, each spiral lantern throwing fractured light. At the rookery, Arch Grey Worm waited, leather tunic gleaming with fresh oil, expression carved from stone. 2 unsullied flanked him. The king sends escort, Grey Worm said. Tyrion lifted a brow. Is our Sam a prisoner already? Safe, Grey Worm replied, neither jesting nor mocking. Crowd restless, better safe. The courtyard smelled of rain-soaked lime mortar and new rushes. Sam glimpsed the city walls. Beyond them yellow torches swayed like fireflies, where the night's riot had scorched Cobbler Square. He mounted the rookery steps between his silent guards, and heard ravens croak impatient greetings overhead. The keeper presented his favored bird, a glossy gray wing, then offered a copper knife to nick its leg. Sam refused. He refused every day. Ravens bore their messages well enough without pain. Instead, he tied the letter to a leg band and murmured, "Fly swift, wind friend?" The bird launched into a pearl dawn, wings rowing damp air. From the ramparts he watched it dwindle until Tyrion's voice tugged him back. 1 barrel of gold for starving small folk, the dwarf sighed. 10 barrels of blood before the week is out. Only if we fail. Sam said, but his fingers worried at his chain. Wandero. Midday, in the solar of the hand. Jon Snow scrawled signatures across decrees while Bran dozed in the hearth chair, gaze roving inward upon things unseen. When Sam entered, both Starks looked up together. Two ends of the same unbroken root. Jon put down his quill. "You sent the letter," he said. "Not question, certainty." Sam nodded. "Good." Jon's gray eyes held storms barely banked. Justice must start somewhere. Bran's lips curved in that half-smile that seemed to hold centuries. "Ripples become tides, Samwell. Be ready to swim." Sam glanced at the ashwood box beside Bran's chair. Within lay Raven replies to his first modest disclosures. Incorrect tallies of post-war grain. A steward fined. A septon exiled for forging signatures to seize widow tithes. Small victories. Yet each parchment in the box bore a smear from some trembling hand, and one had arrived wrapped around a dead field mouse. Fear, he thought, traveled faster than ravens. "I'll swim," he promised, "but I'll not drown alone." Bran's eyelids fluttered. His voice dropped into the hollowed tone that meant visions brushed his mind. "Before winter's first frost, a blade of bright gold will seek your heart. It will miss if you carry no metal." Then the king blinked. "Human again. Do not wear armor at night for a time," he added simply. The room chilled. Jon scraped back his chair. "We'll double your guard." Sam laid a hand on Jon's sleeve. "And hide behind pikes. The realm sees enough steel." "Let them see ink." Jon exhaled. "As you say. But ghosts walk these halls for less." "Bess." Bran's smile, and the flames crackle, followed Sam into the corridor. And 2 days later, Lord Renifer Foot arrived red-eyed and swaying from Saddle Lake. Rumor outpaced him. A full day of lampoon songs in Fleabottom called him Renifer the Gilt Rat. Small folk drew gleeful chalk pigs on tavern doors. Foot demanded audience. The hand scheduled a hearing. Sam prepared parchment bundles and a pot of mild nightshade for his nerves. They met in the small hall, stone cool despite noon heat. Foot's hair clung to damp temples. His doublet, forest green sewn with acorns of beaten copper, looked hastily brushed. "The accusations are libel," he proclaimed before chairs scraped into place. "Arbor gold?" Merchants misrecorded. Sam laid out shipping manifests stamped by 3 harbor masters, ledgers with altered numerals over the original lighter strokes, sworn testimonies from teamsters who hauled the barrels inland only to be rerouted under arms. Each page weighed like iron on the table. Foot's jaw bristled. He reached for his signet, only to realize his hands shook. "Forged," he croaked. Sam slid forward the master ledger, obtained from the Tyrell counting house, after a midnight mull with Morin's quiet agents, bearing Foot's own signature on the allocation order. Jon regarded it, brow furrowed, then pushed it to Bran. Bran's fingers brushed the ink as though tasting it. "You will repay," the Boy King said softly. "7-fold. In grain. Delivered before harvest ends." Foot's eyes bulged. "Impossible. Then your lands will be seized until you think of ways." Jon's voice held winter. "Dismissed." Foot left stumbling, escorted by Unsullied. Sam watched him vanish with no triumph. Truth felt less a victory than a sentence handed down by some stern god. After the hall emptied, Tyrion lingered with a half-grim smile. One down. All the realm to go. Sam rubbed grit from his lashes. One, yes. But the 7 kingdoms learned something. We will not look away. Some will decide it's safer to gouge the eyes out. The warning echoed down corridors as Sam climbed to his chamber. Bran's prophecy pulsed within memory. Bright gold. Seek your heart. Foot's livery bore gilt acorns. Coincidence? Sam requested no guard that night, yet barred the door and kept a whetstone near to strike flint for candles, not blades. Armor he left hanging. He slept little, dreams thrashing with river water and arrows. Just to say. Hundreds of leagues north, beneath Winterfell's high broken towers, Gilly warmed her hands over an ash-fattened hearth. Rime feathered the window. Summer's end arrived early in the north. Little Sam dozed beside a hound pup lent by Lady Arya, its paws twitching. Sansa Stark sat across the table, reading Sam's long parchment by lamplight. Her red-gold hair coiled atop a gown of thick umber wool. Her face was mask still until tears glimmered. She set the page down. "He burdens himself too deeply," she whispered. Gilly cupped her tea. "Sam's strong when he believes he's not. The fear makes him move." She smiled shyly. "He's always afraid. But he still stood on the fist of the first men, still killed a White Walker. Fear doesn't stop him." Sansa touched the direwolf head pommel of the dagger at her hip. "And now, he duels paper whites." She rose. "He asks counsel. I'll give more. I'll give northern steel." Her gaze drifted toward the courtyard where hoarse breaths rained mist. "I'll send Brienne south, and Willa Manderley. She has quill wit sharp as any maester's. He'll not bleed alone." Letters drafted, ravens fed, wings took to wind. By dawn, 5 riders thundered through the Hunter's Gate, heading south with cloak hoods snapping. What? In the capital, days blurred. Interrogations, audits, pages of cramped script that left Sam's shoulders knotted. He moved between council chamber and archive with a clergyman's monotony. Yet with each exposure, a minor Tyrell offshoot cheating tariffs, a Dornish spice consortium bribing dock judges, murky channels cleared. Grain wagons rolled cheaper along the Roserad. Small folk found coin for winter salt. Hope sprouted, tentative. Opposition sprouted too. A pamphlet appeared, inked in sleek Brivosy cursive, accusing Sam of heresy against mothers of virtue, of perverting accounts to weaken holy power. It named him the False Quill. Septons in purple-trimmed robes read excerpts from pulpits. Crowds spat at the Citadel's lilac standard. One evening, as Sam crossed the torch-dotted bridge between Maegor's Holdfast and the Tower of the Hand, a shout rang, "False Quill!" A copper goblet sailed from shadows, striking his shoulder before clattering away. Pain flared. More shouts echoed. Footsteps pounded. The Unsullied escorted him through the gate and barred it as stones rattled the portcullis. In the incident's wake, Tyrion arrived, cheeks flushed with brandy and fury. "Our enemies swap quills for slings," he said. "I urged the king. Let me muzzle the printers." Sam refused. "Every voice reveals itself," he said, though his bruised arm throbbed. "Silence makes martyrs. I prefer villains who speak, they write their own noose." Tyrion's laugh rasped. "You mistake the realm for a library again. Some pages want to burn the shelves down." He softened. "At least take a guard everywhere. Grey Worm can spare 20. "I'll take one," Sam allowed. "More unsettle the small folk." "Small folk," Tyrion muttered. "Love fear. It warms them like soup." Arr. Night hung damp and still when Sam retreated to the Grand Maester's observatory atop the rookery. He watched comet dust streak ink-black sky. His lone Unsullied sentinel waited by the stairs, spear upright. Sam exhaled, letting wind puzzle his chain. Above, the constellations spoke old truths unchanged by mortal deceit. Sword, crown, direwolf, stallion. Stars needed no ledgers. Their honesty stared forever. Boot grit whispered behind him. Sam turned, expecting his guard. Gray leather boots of fiddler's cut design trod nearer. Fine boots, gilt buckles winking. "Foot." No, the man emerging from lamplight bore a slender rapier, blade glimmering pale gold, waxed mustache, jaunty tilt of hat plume. Sir Ronald Rowan, famed for tourney grace, and cousin to Lord Renifer Foot. Bran's prophecy. A blade of bright gold. Rowan smiled. "Beg pardon, Grand Maester. Your god enjoys a nap." Blood darkened his rapier's tip. Somewhere on the stair a soft thud echoed. Sam's pulse hammered. No armor upon him but wool and leather. Rowan advanced slowly. "My cousin frets. The Reach frets. Best ease their burden." He brought the rapier upward in an elegant salute. "Hold still, you may hardly feel the prick." Sam stepped back until the parapet pressed his spine. Wind tossed his cloak. He sought any tool. Scroll case? Too light. Oil lamp. Flames flickered inside. He seized it. "I've faced blades before," he said, voice cracking. "I killed worse than you." Rowan's smile widened. "White walkers and ghost stories? I duel flesh." He lunged. Sam swung the lamp. Hot oil splashed. Flames screamed into night. Rowan flinched, cloak edge igniting. He cursed, slapping sparks. Sam used the heartbeat gap to dive sideways. Pain ripped his neon stone. He scrambled behind a rain barrel. Rowan slapped cloak free, rage twisting features. He stabbed. The rapier tip punched wood inches from Sam's ear. Sam grabbed a fallen broom and jabbed wildly. The thin staff snapped against steel. Rowan mocked him with a fencer's laugh. "Is this your ink courage?" He flicked the sword. Its edge caught moonlight, bright gold. Sam's mind raced. No armor, no sword, only truth. And fear. Fear could move him. He hurled the broken broom half. Rowan parried easily, and Sam seized the barrel spigot, twisting. 4 days of collected rain gushed out. Water sheeted across stone, rushing toward Rowan's polished boots. The fencer slipped, arms pinwheeling. Sam charged, shoulder lowered. They collided. The rapier scraped Sam's ribs but failed to pierce thick wool. Together they tumbled, skidding toward the parapet. Sam seized the hilt, pushing it aside. Rowan wrenched a dagger from belt and slashed. Sam caught the wrist, desperate strength born of terror. They wrestled on soaked stone. Rowan's dagger nicked Sam's cheek. Warm blood blurred sight. Thunder growled somewhere beyond sea horizons. At edge of the parapet, Rowan kneed Sam's gut. Freeing himself, he rose, dagger ready to plunge. Sam, on hands and knees, spied the broken oil lamp guttering. Liquid fire still licking its rim. He scooped it barehanded and flung. Flames blossomed across Rowan's jerkin. The night shrieked, staggering back. Cloth flared. Gold buckles glowed red hot. He toppled over the parapet, scream ripped away by wind. The rapier clanged onto stone, blade ringing once before silence swallowed it. Sam knelt panting, palm blistered, rainwater hissing over scattered embers. Trembling, he crawled to the stair where the unsullied guard lay sprawled, pulse faint but steady. Sam shook him awake. Together they descended for aid. At dawn, healers salved Sam's burned hand and stitched his cheek. Bran summoned him to the godswood again. Dew-silvered grass. The weirwood's face wept crimson sap. "You lived," Bran said. Sam managed a laugh close to sob. "Truth kept me no armor." "Truth armored you," Bran replied, touching the trunk. "But armor grows heavier. Wear it wisely." Sam bowed. "I will. But Rowan's fall may spark a Reach rebellion." "Let it," Bran murmured. "Storms uproot rotten trees." Funeral pyres burned 3 nights. One for Sir Rowan, whose charred body surfed ashore at Blackwater Rush. One for the unsullied guard, whose wound turned mortal by dawn. One for 7 small folk trampled during the riot Rowan's death incited. Sam watched flames lick sky, heart leaden. Every lie exposed cost lives like these, innocent or near to. When Tyrion joined him at the balustrade, the dwarf spoke without prelude. "Brienne and Willa Manderly arrived," he said. "Sansa sent northern ice to cool southern heat." Sam swallowed gratitude. "Have them audit shipping quotas from Gulltown," he suggested. Rumors swirl of smugglers bribing Gulltown officials. "Already set," Tyrion answered. "Our Lady of Tarth wields ledgers as if they were tourney lances. Quite uplifting. It will grow darker before dawn." Sam murmured. "Gaze on the pyres." Tyrion sipped wine. "So says every zealot who lights his own brand." Wayne. Brienne's arrival changed rhythms. Where Sam's scholarship moved gently, she marched. She stormed the records office, demanded duplicate accounts from captains, cross-examined clerks until quills trembled. With Willa Manderly, she plotted travel to Gulltown. Sam urged caution but approved. They rode east under unsullied escort, parchments locked in brass-bound chests. In their absence, Sam tackled the biggest dragon. The Faith. High Septon Artos held near unchallenged sway over war-weary souls. Sam uncovered minutes of a secret synod wherein Artos approved indulgences sold to Westerland's magnates in exchange for shipping rights at Lannisport. The price: 500 weight of silver chalices melted down to coin. Worse, Artos penned letters urging silent acquiescence should those same magnates reclaim lands lost to heretical crown edict. Sam collated the letters, annotated each with dates and witnesses. He penned a measured message requesting the High Septon's explanation in open council. When the summons reached the great sept of memory, bells tolled hollow. Artos replied not with parchment, but procession. Hundreds of poor fellows and warriors' sons marched across the city bearing crystal lamps, chanting curses at the quill serpent. Their armored feet rattled cobbles outside the Red Keep. Jon deployed gold cloaks to hold gates while archers lined walls. Spears glittered sunlit. Tension thrummed like harp strings. Sam stood beside Jon above the battlements, parchment scroll trembling. Artos emerged from the knot of bodies, fat beneath billowing cloth of silver robes. He raised a golden seven-spoke star. "Grand Maester," he cried, voice booming, "you wound the mother's heart, yet mercy may still prevail. Recant your false charges before the gods, and all bloodshed ends tonight." Sam's breath frosted though air held summer. He pictured Foot's greed, Rowan's dagger, children hungrier than lords' purses. He pictured an older lie, the truth of Jon's birth, waiting, coiled, patient. "I serve the gods with truth," he answered, voice amplified by the ruined scars echoing arch. "If you fear truth, your faith rests on sand." Roars shook the crowd. Poor fellows pressed forward, shields banging. Jon raised a hand and the archers knocked, but did not draw. Endolf crystallized, parchment against star. Hours crawled. Sam's throat cracked with dust. Sunset flared, painting mailed fists blood red. At length, Tyrion advised Bran through the weirwood throne. Bran sent word, "Do not spill blood." Sam swallowed. He leaned over the parapet and addressed Artos again. "Tomorrow at dawn," he said, "I will lay my evidence before a conclave of septons within the great sept of memory. If I speak lies, let the gods strike me there." The arch braced his voice. "But if my words stand, you will resign." Gasps rippled. Artos' eyes narrowed, calculating. Pride warred with fear of public disapproval. At last he bowed stiffly. "So be it, Grand Maester. The gods weigh souls at dawn." The faith host withdrew, singing hymns that sounded like threats. Jon exhaled, shoulders unclenching. "Dawn will be long in coming," he muttered. Sam merely nodded, mind already parsing arguments. "Yeah." Night unraveled in frantic preparation. Davos helped scour harbor logs tying Lannisport script to faith coffers. Podrick Payne, now captain of the Lord Commander's Guard, retrieved witness statements from tavern scribes bribed for silence. Gendry smithed iron cases to escort the documents. Arya Stark slipped in unseen, dropping a purse of Braavosi coins and advice whispered like knife edge. "Cut tendon, not skin." Sam felt gratitude and fear swirl. At cock's first crow, he walked barefoot through dew-wet grass to the gods' wood, and knelt. "Old gods, new gods," he prayed. "Lend truth a louder voice than lies, or strengthen my heart, if truth whispers." Leaves rustled though wind lay still. Gray light soaked the city as Sam rode in an open carriage toward the great sept Ayad. Unsullied flanked him, shields polished. Crowds packed streets, curious, scornful, hopeful. Some tossed rose petals, others spat. A child waved a wooden quill, smiling gap-toothed. Sam touched fingertips to brow and salute. The great sept doors yawned like cavern mouths. Inside, lamps glowed behind seven-hued crystal panes. A dais held the High Septon's throne. Artos sat robed, ringed by 21 senior septons. Benches farther back heaved with lords, knights, small folk, sellswards. High above, carved arches crossed like clasped fingers. Sam advanced alone, documents hugged to chest. Silence shrouded the chamber. He bowed to the stranger's altar, the only god, he sometimes thought, impartial enough to love truth. Arto spoke first, oily cordial. Grand Maester, present your misgivings. The seven listen. Sam cleared his throat. He began with dates. The Red Lake Synod, 3 days after the Battle of the Bells. He named attendees, read aloud an indulgence receipt signed by Artos in his earlier office as Master of the Arsenal. He traced coin shipments, displayed ledgers with matching wax seals. Murmurs swelled. Some septons leaned forward, others scowled. He produced statements from 3 poor fellows, sworn before unsighted gods, describing how indulgence funds bought pikes, not porridge. He unfolded a silk purse of Bravosi silver, minted with the sigil of a lion bending knee to the 7-pointed star. Proof of Lenisport's collaboration. Gasps became shouts. Artos interrupted, voice quavering under the vault. These come from misled sinners seeking pardon. Charity demands arms to defend the faithful. Sam laid down the letter bearing Arto's private sigil, instructing Sir Ronald Rowan to silence the fat crow before his quill poisons the orchard. The seal matched the burned edge found on Rowan's corpse. Silence crashed. Septons glanced at each other. Sudden fear in eyes. Artos surged to feet. Face blotched purple. Forgery. Wicked. A new voice rang. It is the High Septon's own hand. Willa Manderly stepped forward from a side aisle, travel cloak streaked with road dust. Behind her Brienne towered in mail. Willa unfurled comparative letters, each penned by Artos across decades, the looping flourish in his final S, the crowfoot contraction of his is space. The crowd watched her demonstrate match after match. Artos staggered. Lies. Thunder boomed outside. A crystal pane cracked with the shock. Rainbow shards trembled overhead. Some called it omen, others weather. Sam felt only relief. Senior Septon Miria Tissel rose, voice tremulous. High Septon Artos, the evidence weighs heavy. By sacred right, we demand you step down until inquiry concludes. Artos wheeled, robe whipping. You would dethrone the father of the faith on slander from fat quill and foreign girls? He reached into his sleeve. Steel flashed. A slim stiletto. Cries broke. Before guards reacted, Brienne drew and dashed forward. Steel rang. Arto's dagger skittered across mosaic. Brienne's pommel clipped his gaunt jaw. He collapsed. Chaos threatened. Poor fellows lunged, but unsullied poured through doors, shields locked. Tyrion's planning, Sam realized dimly. The faith militants lowered weapons at their leader's moan. Septon Miria raised shaking hands. Peace, she implored. The gods have spoken. Sam exhaled a year's worth of tension. Warren. Artos was confined to holy quarters beneath guard. An interim council of 7 elder septons assumed authority. They issued a statement praising candor in service of charity and promising reforms. The riotous undercurrent in King's Landing cooled to uncertain hush. Bravosi pamphleteers published new sheets hailing Sam as Quill of Light. He accepted neither title nor triumph. Arrows of repercussion still arced unseen. That night, Bran convened the small council. Jon presided. Gendry, Davos, Brienne, Willa, Tyrion, and Sam circled oak boards strewn with maps and ink pads. Candlelight jittered. Sam's bandaged palm ached. His eyes burned. "You have broken the faith's spear," Davos said, wonder in his rough voice. "I'd scarce believed it possible without rivers of blood." "Some blood," Sam whispered. Brienne looked pained. "The Septons call us saviors, yet I struck a holy man." "He struck first," Jon reminded. Silence anchors. Bran spoke, remote yet kind. "Samwell, the realm owes you breath. But more storms gather. I saw sails, black, kraken-marked, dawn seas round the Shield Islands. That second, the Ironborn test us again," Davos muttered. "And Gringold fire beneath Dragonmont. The Alchemists' Guild stirs old embers." Sam's stomach twisted. "Wildfire? Who funds them?" Tyrion's eyes flickered. Gold flows from somewhere east, delivered by Karth warlocks craving chaos. He shrugged helplessly. Coin knows no creed. John leaned forward. Then we cut purse strings as we did scroll strings. Sam, how deep do these next ledgers run? Sam closed his lids, felt exhaustion pool yet purpose pulse sharper. To the bottom of the sea, he answered, but I will dive. Brand's gaze glazed silver blue. Not alone. Dawn soon. Rest now, Grand Maester. Tomorrow truth rides seaward. Wander. Sam dreamed of Hornhill's boyhood glade. Bees humming, grass warm, books forgotten beneath elder trees. Rendil Tarley strode from shadow, but his sword melted to quill. Stern eyes softened. Right true, the father ghost said, then vanished. Sam woke with tears drying on cheek, and something close to peace banking ember-like beneath ribs. He rose, bathed, dressed in fresh linen and a simple wool robe, chain over shoulders. No armor? At breakfast, Tyrion slid a parchment across the table. Ship manifest from Old Town. A cog named Golden Gale chartered to the Alchemists' Guild. Its owner hides behind 3 shell companies, final ledger ending at Miria Harlaw of the Iron Isles. He loosed a low whistle. You peel one lie, 10 more sprout. Sam buttered stale bread. Then we learn to love onions, he said, thinking of Davos. Onions, Tyrion mused. Layer by layer, until tears come. Wanda. By midday, Sam and a slim retinue boarded the river galley Quillswift, bound for Driftmark. To meet Corlys Valerian's heirs about Kraken sails, glimpsed near Shield Islands. Spray kissed cheeks. Gulls screeched like squabbling scribes. John saw them off from the quay. Grey worms saluted. Over rolling tide, Sam felt weight lift as city walls receded. Yet truths weighed anchor within his satchel, each scroll a stone. He found a quiet bench, uncorked ink, and began drafting the next treatise. On the deleterious commerce of fire and salt. Words flowed slower than Blackwater's current, yet surer than grief. Behind him, the sea stretched wide, pathless. Above, gulls wheeled honest arcs. He wrote of wildfire and ironborn reavers, of gold that bought terror and lies that bought gold, of a realm trembling between plague and promise. And as syllables took shape, he understood this labor might never finish, in 5 hours, in 5 lifetimes. But work need not end to matter. The value lay in each word wrested from shadow into lamplight. Ink dried in salty breeze. Samwell Tarley set his quill aside, rubbed stiff fingers, and gazed at a horizon washed rose by afternoon sun. Somewhere beyond that line waited new deceits, new daggers, new friends. Fear stirred. So did resolve. Truth was a ship at sea. Timbers creaked, storms threatened. Yet so long as hands gripped rope and hearts held course, it sailed. He breathed, deep as dawn, and leaned into the wind. Aka. Salt spray raked the forecastle of the Quillswift in glittering sheets, and Grand Maester Samwell Tarley savored every cold sting that found his cheeks. The galley flexed under a steady southwest wind, its single broad sail bellying white above a double row of oars that churned the Blackwater's green-gray skin to froth. Each creak of rigging, each splash of oar and boom of wave, felt blessedly clean after weeks in the sour corridors of the Red Keep. No whispers here but gull cries, no plots but the eternal dance of tide and keel. Sam sat amidships on a low sea chest, knees tucked, and quill busy. To either side, unsullied guards stood with spears planted, and eyes scanning horizons where nothing stirred save flights of cormorants. Brienne of Tarth paced the leeward rail in silvered mail, wind sweeping her tawny hair back from a brow set in watchful lines. Willa Manderley and Podrick Payne shared the afterdeck's slanted light, bent over a sheaf of manifests, and exchanging murmured sums. Tyrion Lannister, wrapped in a fox fur cloak despite the mild breeze, had commandeered the weather helm. From that stern perch he sipped Myrish red and barked entirely unnecessary advice to the helmsman, who nodded gravely and did precisely what he would have done without dwarfish instruction. Sam's own ink scratched across vellum as though the nib were a tiny plow opening new earth. He drafted the preamble of a royal proclamation aimed at curbing the Alchemists' Guild. lines set with careful weight, promising strict royal accounting of wildfire consignments, with quarterly inspection by representatives from the citadel and the crown, and concluding with a quiet but unmistakable threat of seizure should volatile substances be withheld from the realm's sworn auditors. The words steadied him, gave form to resolve that still felt raw as a burn beneath bandages. His palm, knitted with pink blisters from the oil lamp's flare, ached when the quill pressed. But he welcomed the ache. Pain meant he had survived the reach-sired blade. Pain sharpened purpose. The quill paused when a shadow crossed his page. Brienne had halted before him, one gauntleted hand resting on the pommel of Oathkeeper. "Master," she asked softly, mindful of sailors' ears, "how many enemies will this parchment earn us?" Sam angled the sheet so sunlight washed the wet ink. "Fewer than the deaths unaccounted for when a wildfire cask explodes in dockside," he answered. "More than I like." Brienne's mouth quirked. Almost a smile, almost a grimace. "Then Pod and I will keep our blades keen." Sam glanced toward the stern where Podrick knelt with Willa. Matching ship names from Old Town registries to the smudged symbols Tyrion's spies had lifted off barrels stacked in the alchemist's cold cellars. There was earnest focus in the young man's bent shoulders, and relief kindled behind Sam's ribs. Podrick Payne had once been a squire who looked perpetually startled. Now he worked like a quiet hinge, joining disparate parts of the king's new machine. "You three are keener than steel already," Sam said. Brienne tipped her head at the parchment. "Still, you light a fuse. I'll stand near with water." She moved on, stride rolling with the deck. Sam watched her go, heart warm at her steadfastness. Then the quill descended again. By the time the sun climbed overhead, he had finished the proclamation, sealed it with black wax, and tucked it into the leather tube about his neck. Noon bells sang from a distant sept. Driftmark's new lighthouse, most likely. And the quill swift's lookout cried land. Sam packed his quill, rolled the sailcloth covering his notes, and rose on stiff legs. Low hills unfurled off the larboard bow, their slopes velvet green above chalky cliffs. At their foot, a waking harbor huddled. Masts thin as needlegrass, tan sails brailed to yards, hulls bobbing on silver water. Above all reared the bones of high tide, Corlys Valerian's once great palace, its pale stones weather-streaked and scalloped by storms, but still proud upon its tidal islet. New scaffolds clustered round shattered arches. Fresh-cut oak beams suggested the sea snake's heirs meant the old mansion to rise again. The quillswift threaded the outer breakwater beneath a scattering of white gulls. Dockhands swung grappling hooks, hauled lines taut, and the galley kissed a barnacled pier. Tyrion clambered ashore first. His vanity demanded that, where possible, he arrive before anyone tall enough to overshadow him. Brienne followed, then Willa and Podrick. Sam descended last. The harbor smelled of tar, wet rope, and the faint iron tang of tide pools. A small honor guard waited, 6 Valyrian oarsmen in azure jerkins sewn with silver seahorses, and at their center, Lady Laena Velaryon, granddaughter of the late Lord Corlys, though Sam had not laid eyes on her since the day King Bran had pardoned the Stormlanders at the Red Keep. She wore a cloak of seawolf fur pinned with a coral brooch, and her white hair, streaked silver as foam, tossed in the breeze. Gray eyes assessed the newcomers with something halfway between courtesy and skepticism. "Grand Maester," she said, inclining her head. "And Lord Tyrion, honored." Her tone hinted that honor seldom brought easy days. She gestured landward. "My cousin Alan awaits in the map room. You'll forgive the dust. High tide sleeps under scaffolds." They traversed a causeway of barn-slippery stones to the little isle, as tide swirled below. Gulls wheeled, cawing demands for fish guts. Sam felt the lash of salt wind tug at his chain like impatient hands. Inside, high tide's halls echoed with hammer blows and the rasp of saw teeth. Workmen doffed caps as the party passed. The map room, tucked behind half-repaired double doors, smelled of old parchment and fresh lime mortar. Great inlaid wooden charts of the narrow sea still dominated the floor, though some pieces lay warped by decades of damp and war. Candles guttered in iron prickets. Alan Velaryon, tall and reed lean, bent over a chart, pinned with colored glass beads. When he straightened, Sam glimpsed a face weathered far beyond Alan's 30-odd years. Sun cuts and wind cracks cross-hatched against a sailor's pallor. He greeted them with a bow sharper than Laena's, eyes bright. "Grand Maester, welcome. I've marked every Ironborn sail sighted since the first week of last moon." He tapped black beads clustered ominously round the Shield Islands. And here, a blood-red bead. The cog Golden Gale, last logged in Old Town but glimpsed in company of a Kraken-sigilled longship 3 days later. Sam's stomach tightened. "Where?" Ellen placed the red bead between Stonecrab Cay and the Mandar's mouth. "Winds are favorable for them to reach Banner Elk Bay within 2 days. Less if they bend oars." Tyrion's finger darted, tracing invisible probabilities. A wildfire shipment, escorted by Ironborn thieves. Delightful. If they come ashore near Bannerman's Wood, they strike the Reach's grain stores and vanish by creek and marsh. Bread riots follow. Nobles howl. Someone profits. Nesim sickening. Sam nodded grimly. Warlocks of Karth, perhaps. Chaos sells. He turned to Laena. "How many hulls can Driftmark muster?" "7 present," she answered. 4 more at sea. Light galleys, 1 Drummond. "Good." Brienne's voice rumbled low. "We sail to meet them." Podrick shifted, anxious. "But if they keep to shoals?" "That," Tyrion said, "is why the gods invented cunning." He squinted up at Sam. "How are you with lies, my truth lover?" "Terrible," Sam confessed. "Excellent." Tyrion clapped once. "Then we let our enemies believe only what needs believing." Plans hatched like seabird eggs under torchlight. Swift boats fanning east to scout. A feint at the Mandar mouth. A net of driftwood and pitch to corral the cog. Sam offered strategy borrowed from histories of the Stepstone's Blackfire campaign, reef maneuvers and fire lantern signals. Willa proposed a false ledger, accidentally slipped to Shield Island taverns, naming a different landing cove. Laena approved with curt nods. The council dispersed near sunset. Sam wandered a half-collapsed balcony that gazed over the widening sea. Here Lord Corlys had once shown a young Rhaenyra the horizon, promising her the world. Now broken marble balusters cast blue shadows across his feet. He leaned on the cool stone and allowed the roar of surf to wash his mind clear of ink and blood. Out there, somewhere in gathering dusk, rode Ironborn eager to slit throats for barrels of green death. And here stood a book-fed boy become Maester, plotting sea chases. Was this truly the course truth demanded? Another wave boomed against rock, and Sam felt it spray on his face. Salty, bracing, undeniable. The sea cared nothing for doubt. It only moved. Night brought a westerly gale. Sam and Tyrion shared a repaired solar whose mullioned windows rattled like dice. Rain whispered through cracks in the ceiling planks. Tyrion poured 2 fingers of wine. "Before lightning steals it," Tyrion said, "I'll speak a thought that crusted behind my teeth since we left King's Landing. The faith's upheaval buys us a moon of breathing room at best. Artos still has loyalists. Once we check the Ironborn hell stir. Lenadam Sal." Sam cradled his cup. "I know," he said. "But one battle at a time." "One battle?" Tyrion echoed, staring into the claret. "When you expose the Iron Bank's part in this, oh, don't gape. I can hear the cogs in your quill box. We face a war of ledgers deeper than Lannisport vaults. I cannot stop." The words came small but firm. "If we leave rot buried, Bran's peace will die of infection." Tyrion downed half his cup, wiped his mouth. "Ay. So we lance, we bleed, we scar." He eyed Sam oddly. "My sister said once that power lies where men believe it lies. She never grasped that belief, and thus power can shift. You, Samwell Tarly, shift it with parchment. Do take care not to drown under the weight." He raised the second half cup in salute, drank, and turned to bedroll. Sam lay awake long after, listening to rafters groan like old timbers at sea, and thinking of wings, raven wings, dragon wings, wings of words. When sleep came, it dragged him through storm spray dreams. John standing on a cliff of black glass, cloak flapping dragon-like, while below wildfire trickled through city gutters like green serpents. Sam reached to warn him, but his own hand dripped ink that turned to blood and seeped away with the tide. Morning cracked blue and gold. The storm had blown itself east, leaving the air rinsed and sharp. Driftmark's piers bustled with sailors lashing crates, stacking nets heavy-weighted with stones, checking crossbow strings. Sam broke fast on dried seaweed bread and a surprising stew of crab and apple. With the first sun-spark on water, the flotilla slipped moorings. Lena aboard the Drummond Seafoam, Alan on his swift cutter Sea Star, Brienne and Pod on the Quillswift again, Tyrion cursing the damp as he clambered amidships. Sam took a place beside the helmsman, parchment satchel strapped across his chest. The plan spun out like netting over water. Sea Star and two sister cutters raced ahead, hugging kelp dark shoals to catch the first sight of enemy sails. The Drummond held west, its broadside of scorpions a blunt threat meant to corral. Quillswift and its twin-oared galley Wavekite veered south, where a half-submerged sandbar rose like a claw. Here, sailors loosed bundles of driftwood soaked in lamp oil, strung together by tarred rope. Should the cog Golden Gale cut east as predicted, a single flaming arrow would float a long wall of fire across her bow and drive her toward Seafoam's waiting jaws. Wind rose, stiff and constant, as though some storm goddess exhaled intent. Seagulls rode and dipped. Sam stood braced at the stern, watching the wake leave pale chevrons behind. Brienne approached, helm under arm. "Steel yourself," she said, offering a gentle bow of that tall head. "The first clash of ships tests more than swords. I faced a wight in darkness once," Sam reminded her. The memory fluttered his pulse even now. "But ships, I've only read their battles." "Remember the black tide at the Battle of the Blackwater," Brienne said. "Wildfire everywhere. Men screaming like kettles. Our enemy today means to repeat such songs. We must silence them before they strike the first chord." Podrick bounded up the companionway, cheeks windy red. "Rider from Sea Star," he called. Sails spotted, 2 points north of Gull Reef. Sam followed Brienne forward. A skinny cabin boy slid down the belaying lines, feet thumping deck. "5 sails, sir," he panted. 3 long ships, 1 cog, 1 smaller trader. Flying kraken and ragged crossbones. Tyrion sidled up, cloak streaming. "Small trader. Painted hull, m'lord. Looks Lyseni." Willa tucked a quill behind her ear. "Warlock's courier, maybe. Thin hull. 1 good ram cripples her." Laena's banner on Seafoam dipped once, the signal for attack readiness. Sam's stomach knotted. He bent over the rail to watch Quillswift's oars dig deep. The immediate future smelled of pitch and fear. Spray whipped white lines over the sea as the flotilla converged. From the top of the mizzen, Sam saw black shapes cresting a swell. Ironborn raiders with sterns carved into fanged krakens, rowing hard despite the tailwind. Prow shields catching sunrise glints. Between them lumbered the Golden Gale. Square-rigged, holed low in the water, heavy with something. Green death. Sam's breath hitched. A shrill whistle from Seafoam cut the air. Flame-tipped arrows rose from her foredeck, curving amber arcs. One plunged into the tar-roped driftwood wall. Fire leapt blue-orange, then flared green, where wildfire residue from old barrels soaked the planks. A curtain of burning foam erupted, hissing and spitting jade sparks. Sam heard distant shouts from the cog. Oars spun water-white, long ships turned awkwardly. Quillswift surged, angled to cut the cog's stern. Brienne towered at the prow, shield high. Podrick stood beside a scorpion ballista, rope muscles taut. "Loose," he roared, and the bolt streaked. It tore through sailcloth of a trailing longship, splintering mastfoot. Ironborn shrieked. Sam clutched rail. The cog veered starboard, away from the flaming barrier and into wave troughs. Wavekite's prow-knife waters there, nets ready. The Lyseni trader jibed clumsily, seeking escape to deeper sea, but Sea Star darted like a silver fish, lines flying. Grapnels latched rail. Alan's men swarmed, blades flashing sunlit tiers. A breath later, smoke spiraled from the trader's hold. Firepots tossed below decks. Sam saw dark-robed figures on her waist deck hurl vials that shattered green flames across planks. Warlocks indeed. For a moment, chaos clogged the world. Crackling wildfire, salt smoke, clang of steel, and over it all a keening wind. Sam's eyes streamed. Through the haze he spotted golden casks rolling loose on Golden Gale's deck, crew scrambling to chain them. Wildfire barrels, so many. Brienne shouted. Quillswift's prow ran the cog amidships with a teeth-rattling crunch. Wood shattered. Oars splintered beneath hulls. Brienne vaulted rail to deck, Oathkeeper whistling scarlet arcs. Unsullied poured behind her. Sam remained, mind racing. If a single torch caught those casks, every soul would roast. He spotted haggard sailors dragging open a hatch, fleeing below. He cupped hands to mouth and roared, "Buckets! Water lines!" But the roaring wind swallowed his plea. Another jolt tossed him sideways, wavy kite grappling Golden Gale's bow. The deck pitched. Sam's satchel thumped his chest. Not parchment now. Lives. He crossed the gangplank behind Willa, who carried a coiled rope like a whip. The cog deck pitched again. Timbers groaned. Brienne fought near the mainmast, warding two axe-wielding raiders. Podrick squared against a bearded giant whose hammer could crack shields and skulls in one swing. Sam darted toward the nearest cask cluster. Wax-sealed bungs glistened. A small brazier's kolpin, left by the Ironborn to heat javelin tips, glowed perilously close. He skidded, seized a pail from a tangle of rope, and dipped seawater through a shattered rail. When he turned, a raider loomed, dagger high. Sam swung the brimming bucket. Water splashed eyes. Dagger missed. A second bucket blow crushed the man's nose. He toppled. Sam scarcely breathed. He heaved the coal pan over the side. Steam hissed. Across the deck, Alan Valerian clambered from Seaster's line, trailing 5 Delta men with pikes. They formed a living wedge, driving raiders aft. Tyrion, improbable but unmistakable, scrambled atop a capstan, knife no bigger than a quill in hand, shouting in coarse low Valerian words that sounded filthy and, judging by a reaver's laugh, wildly insulting. Brienne felled one foe, kicked another, pressed. Blood sprayed. Podrick ducked the warhammer, slipped his sword beneath chain links. Pierced armpit, hammer fell. Willa cracked rope coil against a raider's temple. The man spun down like a felled mast. Sam dashed to the next barrel cluster. An Ironborn woman, braided beard rings hammered into hair, lit a pitch rag and lobbed it toward him. He felt heat sear his cheek before instinct threw him flat. The rag sailed over, struck a spar, and flared. Flames raced up tar-soaked rope toward a yard thick with sail. Sam scrambled, hacking rope with a fallen axe, but too late. The sail drooped, ignited in a roar of green. Wind caught the blaze. Wildfire sparks rained. Somewhere a man screamed forever. "Sam?" Brienne's voice hammered across the din. "The hold. They're lighting below." Sam lunged for the open hatch. Acrid smoke belched. He clambered down a ladder slick with sweat and seawater. Darkness throbbed around the hiss of embers. Shapes moved. 2 Ironborn crouching over a cracked barrel, fumbling flint. Sam raised the axe, hardly realizing he still held it. "Stop!" he barked, voice raw. One reaver laughed, struck steel. Spark showered. Sam hurled the axe. It spun, buried in Flint Man's collarbone. Blood spurted black in gloom. Man sagged. The second recoiled, drew cutlass. Sam had no weapon now, but a length of chain rigging snarled on the deck. He swung it wide. Link smashed cheek, cutlass rang away. Sam charged. Shoulder first. They collided. Reaver lost footing. Slipped on slick boards. Hit head, stilled. Sam gasped air thick with smoke and tar. He closed the barrel lid, drove the axe haft through hoops as makeshift pin. More casks lined walls, ominous. He seized a rope line and lashed the barrels one to another, then to a pillar, praying the hold would not ship water and burst. Flames crackled overhead. Smoke thickened. Sam stumbled back to ladder. Above, the firefight ebbed. Raiding longships fled, rowers bent like frantic insects. Waters glittered with oil fires, but the cog remained. Brienne and Podrick rallied sailors to douse the deck blaze. Willa organized a bucket chain. Lena Stroman had grappled seafoam to Golden Gale's stern. Her marines swarmed over, cutting free flaming sailcloth, booting battle-spoil corpses into surf. Tyrion helped Sam over the rail onto Quillswift the moment lines parted. "You look half-roasted," the dwarf said. "And stink of smoke." Sam coughed. "Hold secure," casks lashed. "We need a safe port." "Lena says Spicetown," Tyrion replied. "Harbor's deep. Her cousins hold it. We unload and inspect every barrel." Sam nodded, throat raw. Brienne approached. Helm under arm, mail singed. "No losses on our deck?" Aelin captured 3 warlocks, bound tight. "Excellent," Tyrion said. "A conversation with Shadebinder fanatics may amuse our king." Sam's legs buckled. Brienne caught him before deck kissed his skull. Someone brought water. He drank, spilling half down front. The rest of the day blurred. Green casks slung by crane. Ironborn prisoners gagged. The Lysni trader scuttled. Sea fires doused. Evening spread lilac hues over the battered flotilla as it limped towards Spicetown. Undan. 3 days later, Grand Maester Samwell Tarly stood in a hilltop courtyard, above Spicetown's patched red clay roofs, awaiting the prisoner's confession. He had slept little, but each breath came easier now. The wildfire lay in stone sheds under Velaryon lock and key. Warlocks of Korth, stripped of silken robes and peacock masks, shivered in chains while Unsullied prodded them forward. Brienne and Laena flanked Sam, and Tyrion lounged on a parapet nibbling pomegranate seeds. The eldest warlock, scalp tattooed with cobalt runes, stared at Sam through eyes inked black. "We serve the Undying," he hissed. "Flames feed on order. You obstruct destiny." Sam folded arms. "Chaos is profitable for those who sell fear. Your puppets failed. Mine pin. In this cycle," the warlock murmured. "Others ascend." He smiled. Sam felt chill. Laena's patience snapped. She gestured. Unsullied dragged warlocks away toward a waiting Drummond bound for King's Landing dungeons. Sam exhaled. Tyrion spat a seed husk. Interrogation defined as no. "Thank you, try another port." Effective. He hopped down. "Shall we pen our report to the king?" Sam produced parchment. Already begun. Their quills scratched until dusk. The message told of seized wildfire, captured warlocks, ironborn collusion, suspected accounts in Bravos, and eddy in the larger river of lies. As Sam melted wax over the seal, he hesitated, then added a final line. "Further inquiries suggest funds traced through the Iron Bank under the seal of a faceless account, likely noble in origin. I will pursue." He attached the scroll to a raven, watched wings beat skyward, and murmured, "Fly swift, wind friend." "When?" Ravens winged in reply before the fortnight ended. One carried Joan's concise praise and a directive: return with proof against Iron Bank or noble conspirators. Another bore Bran's strange hand, more shapes sensed than seen. "The lion's den stirs. Guard your quill. Trust the wolf who sails south. Her fang is sharp." Sam puzzled until a third raven arrived from Sansa Stark, written in clear northern strokes. "I come to King's Landing by sea with Sir Davos. Your letters guide our purpose. Prepare." Sam's breath caught. Sansa sailing south meant a public alliance between the Crown and the Queen in the north. A display of unity that might steady or shatter nobility. He drafted a reply, urging caution, yet felt relief bloom. Truth, once a lonely ship, gained a fleet. Spicetown's harbor bustled with repair. Valyrian carpenters installed iron locks on the wildfire sheds, and Brienne drilled volunteers in bucket lines and scorpion operation. Podrick learned sea knots. Willa sketched coastal defenses. Yet, Sam's mind ranged farther, following silver routes of coin across seas. One lamp-lit night he sprawled over ledgers Bran had sent via fast courier. Iron Bank transactions flagged by King's Whisperers. Tiny sums, layered like onion skin, led through dummy trusts in Bravos, then not city, then again Bravos. Each ended with the sigil of a three-towered castle, crudely etched. Sam knew the mark. The personal cipher of Lord Mathis Rowan, warden of the Upper Mander, father to that same Sir Ronald who had tried to murder him. A chill brushed his spine. Rowan had ties to the Hightowers, to the Faith, to half the trade houses of Old Town. His quills reached farther than Sam's by far. If he financed wildfire through the Iron Bank and allied with Korth warlocks to burn the realm for gain, Sam's next move risked not one assassin, but an army of purchased blades. He stared at the cipher until ink blurred, then rose and found Lena on the seaward rampart. Moonlight glazed broken merlons. Gulls slept heads tucked on piles below. "Lena," he said, "I must ride for King's Landing at first tide. But I leave you a task. Keep these barrels stored, yet do not trust locks. Post guard day and night. Forbid lanterns within 20 paces. If even one spark." She raised a gloved hand. "Spistown sails no stranger to fire, Grand Maester. We will watch." Sam nodded gratitude. "Also, should Raven come, that Rowan ship's anchor off Old Town, send word, readying for siege or skullduggery. Either way we must know." Lena studied him, sea-gray eyes thoughtful. "You wage pen wars like my grandsire waged at sea, but his charts marked storms and shoals. Mark yours, Samwell, else drown." "I will," he promised, hollow but earnest. Quillswift sailed the next dawn, now patched and proudly bearing Valerion ribbon on her mast. Brienne, Podrick, Willa, and Tyrion joined once more. The warlocks shackled in the hold provided grim ballast. Salt wind tugged Sam's hair as Spicetown receded. He pressed palm to satchel where Rowan's cipher copy rustled. "A lion's den stirs," Bran had written. Lions indeed. Rowan's bore golden lion trees on green, and further west Lannister gold might yet gleam behind curtains. But truth had claws too. The voyage home passed mercifully calm. At night, Sam read by moon lantern on the quarterdeck, while Brienne and Pod practiced swordwork in silence, blades whispering. Tyrion told Podrick Rebald songs about married mermen. Willa mapped the coast for gaps in beacon coverage. Peaceful hours felt stolen, but Sam hoarded them like a miser. In one such quiet he penned a letter to Gilly, the first in moons longer than respectable, describing Driftmark's gulls and the way wildfire reflects dragon green in wave troughs, yet sparing her the blood. He sealed it with blue wax and entrusted it to Quillswift's swiftest raven. 5 days out, a squall harried them but spared masts. On the 6th dawn, King's Landing's rebuilt scarred skyline surfaced from mist. Cranes, scaffolded towers, the red keeps, clean-cut spires. Smoke of hearths curled upward. Sam's pulse quickened. Beneath the soot and memory of dragonfire, the city breathed. The galley kissed a royal pier, where gold cloaks in bright new liveries formed ranks. Grey Worm waited stone-faced, and beside him, impossibly tall against the mast, stood Tormund Giantsbane, red beard plated with snowy feathers. At the wildling's side, Ghost the direwolf paced, fur white as chalk, eyes ember. Sam disembarked astonished. Tormund enveloped him in a rib-crushing embrace that smelled of pine tar and bear grease. "Little crow maester," he roared. "Jon Snow said truth fights here. Thought I'd lend axe." Sam laughed, breathless. "Your axe is welcome, though we war with ink these days." "Ink?" Tormund snorted. "Tried that once. Got hands all black, nothing died." Ghost nuzzled Sam's injured hand, warm tongue rough. Sam buried fingers in thick fur and felt courage steady. Whatever storm awaited within marble walls, he would not face it alone. Grey Worm led them through bustling streets to the Red Keep. The markets hummed wary admiration. Wildfire barrels had been rumored. Now word spread of Valerion victory. Ironborn repelled. Children dashed after the direwolf's tail. Sam spied pamphleteers hawking new sheets. Quill of Light seizes green death. The caricature showed him scrawny and heroic, which made Tyrion cackle. Inside the keep, Bells rang to announce King Bran's court. Jon met them outside council chambers, eyes soft with relief. He clasped Sam's shoulders. "You did it," he said. "Only began," Sam replied, voice low. He passed Bran the sealed ledger, Rowan's cipher trails, iron bank channels. Jon's face tightened. "We convene tonight," he decided. "Rowan attends by summons or arrest warrant." Sansa's arrival beat sunset. She strode into the throne room, wrapped in pale fox fur. Auburn hair, noon bright against stone gloom. Sir Davos followed wearing northern gray, seaweed green cloak pinned with carved driftwood. They embraced Jon and Bran before Sansa turned to Sam and kissed his bandaged hand. "For every wound truth gives," she said, "the North offers balm." Sam's eyes stung. "Your presence sets my bones." Council gathered in Bran's solar as dusk drained color from the high windows. Tyrion, Brienne, Davos, Willa, Jon, Sam, Grey Worm, Tormund and Ghost positioned themselves strangely elegantly at a hearth. Candles cast honey halos. Sam detailed the Ironbank trail. Every few lines Tyrion interjected with clarifying sums. Willa added notations from Gulltown. A second sluice feeding Rowan gold through grain charters. Davos traced shipping routes. Brienne summarized military implications should Rowan muster reach levies. Sansa listened, features cool yet eyes sparks. Bran's verdict came soft. Cousin Rowan will answer for treason against the crown and realm. He touched a raven quill, dipped it. Jon draft summons. Jon wrote. Seal set. Grey Worm dispatched messengers. Night deepened. Sam remained after council, staring at the map-strewn table while others drifted to chambers or wall duty. Candle guttered low. Across from him Bran watched. Sight seeming to roam beyond shadow. "You fear tomorrow," Bran said. Sam's shoulders sagged. "Every tomorrow," he admitted. "Yet you walk into them." Bran's eyes glimmered distant green. "The weirwood shows paths. One where wildfire engulfs the city again. One where truths fracture kingdoms. One where winter wolves howl over fields of peace. The difference is choices. Small ones, many, each a quill stroke." "Keep riding, Samwell." Sam swallowed. "Even if ink becomes blood?" "Especially then," Bran whispered. "Blood that sees sun clots. Hidden blood spreads rot." He blinked. Boy returned. Sam bowed. Sleep pressed on him like a slab. He stumbled to his chamber. Aunt's pastels, minus the stale lens-glass odors. On the desk lay a fresh stack of parchment, a stub of lavender wax, and a silver quill stand shaped like a wolf head. A gift, he guessed, from Sansa Tot. He thought to write thanks, but fatigue smashed gently down and he slept, cheek on blank page. Dreams spun quieter. He walked Winterfell's Godswood, snowflakes settling on leaf faces. A voice, Gilles, called across frosted branches, "Come home, Sam." He woke with tear tracks, resolved anew. Dawn crept pale when a bell clanged frantic. Sam lurched upright, heart racing. Footsteps thudded in corridor. Podrick burst in, half-armored. "Rowan's banner," he gasped. "Ate the gate, with 300 men." Sam dressed on adrenaline. In the forecourt, Rowan banners, green field, gold lion tree, fluttered above spears. Lord Mathis sat a white destrier, eyes flinty behind courtesy. He offered Bran deep bows, then cried, "I come to answer false charges." The king's guard parted. The lord dismounted, surrendering sword. But Sam felt chill. 300 heavy horse set camp on the city's doorstep. More than courtesy required. Tyrion whispered, his levy within striking reach should trial turn sour. The trial convened in the great hall. Lords packed benches. Small folk thronged galleries. Sansa presided beside Bran, northern crown glinting. Sam laid out ledgers, cipher copies, flayed layers of shell companies. Every stroke pointed to Rowan gold feeding Iron Bank, which fed wildfire trade. Mathis Rowan countered with glossy calm. "I invested in grain futures, not fire." He produced contracts, indeed showing grain, But Sam revealed margins where ciphers masked replacements of grain, with garnet code for wildfire casks in Harbor Argot. Willa read sailors' affidavits. Alan Valerian testified seeing Rowan Clerk board Golden Gale at Old Town. Each nail drove deeper. When Tormund Giantsbane stomped forward with barrel lid scorched by Foot's shipment, Rowan Crest burned faint in char. Murmurs swelled to thunder. Finally, Sam produced Rowan's private letter to Sir Ronald. Silence the fat crow before Quill poisons orchard. Seal matched. Gasps broke. Rowan's mask cracked. Veins rose purple. He pivoted to fury. Forged. Lies bred by Maesters meddling beyond station. Sam met his glare. Truth forged your doom, my lord, with the heat of your own greed. Bran spoke. Lord Mathis Rowan, you stand judged of treason, conspiracy, attempted murder of Grand Maester, commerce in wildfire. Confess, and mercy may shave the noose. Rowan's jaw set. I confess. Not. He spat. No king of broken bones and ice wolves rules the Mander. He spun toward doors. Hidden signals flashed. Spears leveled outside, but Grey Worm had arrayed unsullied unseen along corridors, and Tormund barred the oak portals with Ghost snarling at his side. Rowan's men found themselves encircled by silent spears. Panic rippled. Minutes later, Rowan knelt in chains. Bran pronounced sentence. Forfeiture of lands, wildfire casks seized for safe destruction. Rowan confined to Old Wick Tower until realm at peace. Foot family stripped of offices, properties dedicated to famine relief. The great hall exhaled. Some lords stormed out. Others knelt, shaken. Sam remained upright by force of will, alone. That evening, after torches were quenched and prisoners carted away, John found Sam in the rookery, watching ravens splash in basins. You bled the lion tree, John said. The reach will roar. Sam toyed with a wet quill. Let them. Seeds of truth grow best in tilled soil. John clasped his shoulder. Rest, Sam. Tomorrow we begin destroying wildfire stocks for good. All of them. Sam smiled faintly. And after that, the next lie. John's laugh rumbled. May they run out before we do. He left. Sam leaned on the sill, breathing night's cool hush. Cloud gaps revealed stars. Sword, crown, direwolf. Same truths shining. He felt exhaustion, pride, grief for fallen, hope for born better. He turned to the table, drew fresh parchment, dipped quill, and wrote the day's events in ink while memory glowed. Words flowed steady, calm as tide inside his skull. Outside, the ravens preened. Inside, a story unrolled. Of a maester who'd chosen to tear the shroud from noble lies, knowing each revelation would summon darker dragons, yet believing daylight, the worthier dragon still. Candles burned low, yet he wrote on, until the first gray hint of dawn seeped between shutters, and set the ink gleaming like wet truth itself, demanding to be read, demanding to live. The city slept, but Grand Maester Samwell Tarly did not. While the Red Keep's towers rose cold, and still in the blue hush before dawn, he worked by a single guttering candle, fingers stained with ink and smoke, heart pounding with exhaustion and something sharper. His shoulders ached from the press of his chain, now thickened with new links of gold and electrum, for knowledge not even the Citadel's oldest archmaesters had dared catalog. Knowledge of power, of corruption, of how the truth, bared and unashamed, could wound a realm as deeply as any sword. He set down the quill and closed his eyes, the parchment's words burning against the lids. When he opened them, the candle had guttered lower. Outside the narrow window, the sky was already graying toward day. Sam allowed himself a moment to listen. A distant raven, restless in the rookery. The slow, soft footfalls of a guard changing post in the corridor. The hush felt temporary, precarious. It reminded him of the hour before battle, when every breath was fraught with what might be lost. He thought of Gilly, of little Sam, safe in Winterfell's stone arms, and of John, now king in all but name, shoulders bent beneath the impossible task of binding the wounds of Westeros. He thought of Sansa, now at his side, her northern calm a balm against the tempests, and of Brienne, always nearby, her oaths as binding as iron. He thought of Tyrion, forever sharp, forever seeking the next move. They were all part of it now. This new, honest kingdom, straining beneath the weight of its own ambitions, each of them balancing upon the edge of a blade, honed by secrets and by truth. The door creaked. Sam turned, expecting a servant, or perhaps Podrick bringing fresh parchment. But it was Sansa. She moved quietly, the silver wolf at her throat catching the candlelight, her auburn hair gathered in a simple braid. For a moment she seemed younger, like the girl she'd once been, but her eyes held winter and wisdom. "You're awake," she said. It wasn't a question. Sam offered a wan smile. "Not for much longer." Sansa stepped inside and closed the door behind her, sitting opposite at the long table scattered with scrolls and tally sticks and gold seals. "I thought you might need company." "I've barely slept either." She glanced down at the open ledger. "The whole realm feels as though it's holding its breath." Sam traced a finger over a line of ciphered figures. "We've pulled up the first tones," he said. "And there are always more beneath. There's unrest in the west, still, even after Rowan's fall. Old Town's merchants demand the Faith's return to power. The Ironborn sent a fleet to the Arbor last night. News came with the first light. The small folk hear only that their grain is cheaper, but the lords are grumbling." Sansa's mouth tightened. "Let them grumble. They ruled by lies too long. We'll give them peace, not platitudes." "Dimar." Sam blinked back, fatigued. "You make it sound easy." She shook her head, eyes softening. "It will never be easy, Sam. But you have done something no Grand Maester before you dared. My father used to say, the only time to speak the truth is always. You live that. You force them to face themselves." Sam hesitated, wanting to confess his doubts. The cost, the fear that each lie exposed only bred 3 more. But he saw in Sansa's gaze that she already understood. Instead, he simply said, "I hope so." They sat a moment in companionable silence. At last, Sansa stood and laid a gentle hand atop his. "When you are ready, there are lords gathered in the Solar. Brienne's with them. I'll wait for you." Sam nodded, and when she left, he set aside his ink-stained linen and donned a fresh robe, wrapping the chain of office about his neck. He looked in the polished brass mirror. A plump man, eyes shadowed, hair graying at the temples. But there was something in the way he lifted his chin that belonged to his father. Something that would not bend, would not break. He left the room with a final glance at the thick folio on the desk. A ledger of every lie, every truth now dragged into the sun. As he closed the door, he felt the weight of it on his back, a burden and a blessing both. The Lord Solar was hot and crowded, even at dawn. Golden sunlight striped the old tapestries and the long table around which the kingdom's new ruling council clustered. Jon stood at the window, silhouetted against the awakening city. Brienne, mail glinting, held the far door. Beside her, Willa Manderly sorted scrolls into neat piles. Tyrion leaned on his elbows, eyes red-rimmed but alive with mischief. Lord Gendry Baratheon, black-bearded and broad as a blacksmith, muttered to Davos Seaworth about the rising price of iron. Across from them, Lord Edmure Tully nursed a cup of wine, fingers tapping nervously. Sam slipped into the only empty seat as Sansa resumed her place at Jon's side. The council fell quiet. Jon turned and offered Sam a nod. "We're waiting on you, Sam." Sam inclined his head, fingers brushing the seals and folders before him. "I have news," he said softly, and their attention sharpened. "Word from Old Town. The Hightowers refuse to accept Rowan's disgrace. They claim the evidence was forged, that Wildfire was never sold on their docks, that the Faith was never bribed. They demand Bran convene a royal inquest. They threaten to withhold tithes and block the honey wine if their name is not cleared." Tyrion grunted. "That's as much a declaration of war as we're likely to get from the south." Lord Gendry spat into the hearth. "Let them try it. They starve before we do." Davos shook his head, quiet but firm. "If Old Town chokes the honey wine, half the Riverlands go hungry. We need to act. Nedendan." Sansa's voice cut through the murmurs, clear and calm. "No rash moves. We are stronger with the truth. The more they protest, the more it shows their guilt. She turned to Sam. Do you have proof? Sam met her eyes. I have the manifests. Copies from the Alchemists' Guild, letters from 3 Old Town captains, a signed account from a steward who handled the gold. If we press, we can force them to yield. But, he hesitated, glancing at John. John understood at once. But if we press too hard, Old Town might rally the faith, and the Reach could march. Brienne's jaw clenched. We can hold the city. We've seen worse. Tyrion flicked a finger. Let's not mistake survival for victory, my lady. Wars are easier started than ended. Sam pushed back from the table. There is another way. Silence met his words. He drew out the folio. We offer them something else. An amnesty for those who come forward. The Hightowers and Faith can choose. Help us clean the rot, or face exposure and ruin. We offer the lesser lords forgiveness for minor crimes if they testify. If enough step forward, the great houses lose their power to threaten the realm. The lords are always first to betray one another when coin is at stake. Nar, Sansa smiled, slow and certain. Divide and rule. Tyrion raised his cup. The oldest law of the land. Jon straightened. Do it. Ah. Sam nodded, and Willa slid fresh parchment before him. He began to write the offer, each word as careful as a vow. Forgiveness for truth, reward for confession, but ruin for those who refused. At his side, Sansa's calm steadied his hand. As the day wore on, the message went out on wings and waves and roads. Sam's words reached Old Town in the space of 2 days, sped by the promise of mercy. Within a week, letters returned, cautious at first, then desperate. A knight confessed to forging grain manifests. A minor Hightower cousin admitted to lending coin to the faith for influence. A septon in Old Town named 3 merchant families who'd paid bribes. With each confession, Sam's ledgers grew longer, but also clearer. The web untangled, line by line. Old Town's bluster waned as their secrets tumbled out. Lord Hightower, pressed from every side, begged an audience in King's Landing. The faith, stripped of its gold and influence, fell to infighting. High Septon Artos died in his cell, poisoned by an unknown hand, and 3 claimants rose in his place. Amid the storm, Sam grew more tired but less afraid. Each day he climbed to the rookery to release new ravens, to Gilly, to Gendry's new smiths in the city, to Sansa's stewards in the north. The messages grew easier, more certain. The realm began to heal. One evening, a rider came from the west, pale with exhaustion and heavy with news. The Ironborn had taken the Arbor's western wharf, but found the barrels empty. Laena Valerian's fleet, guided by Sam's warnings, had destroyed the real shipment 2 days before. The Ironborn, cheated of plunder, withdrew with only smoke and curses to show for it. Sam smiled at the news, and that night he sat with Jon, Sansa, and Tyrion beneath the keep's highest tower. The city's lights flickered below, a constellation of peace won at last by truth. I never thought I'd see the day, Jon said, voice low and almost shy, when the realm might run on honest words. Sansa nodded, gaze far away. The small folk will remember this, Sam. You saved them as much as any knight. Mentor. Tyrion sipped wine. Lies rot faster than meat, but truth endures. As long as men like Samwell write it down. Sam chuckled shy. There will always be more lies, more shadows. That's the way of the world. Jon clapped his shoulder. Then we'll face them together. Seasons turned. Grain ships sailed without bribes or false manifests. The faith, chastened, tended the poor and sick with true piety. Old Town paid its tithes, its pride dented, but its coffers fair. The Iron Bank, checked by exposure, demanded fair interest, but no longer wielded wildfire or knives. Samwell Tarly became not just Grand Maester, but legend. Poets wrote of the Quill of Light. Singers celebrated his mercy as much as his justice. He traveled the realm with Gilly and Little Sam, mending hearts and histories alike. In Winterfell, he rebuilt the library burned by the Boltons. In Old Town, he taught new acolytes the value of open ledgers. In King's Landing, he founded a school for orphaned scribes, where every child learned to read and question. Years passed. John grew older, gray now at the temples, but his rule endured. Sansa's North prospered, hard but proud. Brienne became Lady Commander of the Queen's Guard, her blue cloak a beacon of honor. One winter night, as snow swirled in the capital, Sam sat in his chamber with Gilly and little Sam, who had grown into a curious, broad-shouldered boy. Gilly read aloud from an old book of Stark legends. Sam listened, smiling, as little Sam curled beside him, warm and content. The candle guttered low, but he did not fear the darkness. For once, the shadows in the hall were only shadows. For once, the city beyond the window lay quiet, safe, and honest. As sleep pulled at him, Samwell Tarly whispered a silent prayer, to the old gods and the new, to the Seven and to the Weirwood, to all the nameless powers that watched over truth and courage. He had been afraid all his life, but in the end, it was truth that had made him brave. In the years that followed, Samwell Tarly's legacy lived in every schoolhouse, every open ledger, every council where a lord hesitated before speaking a lie. The realm, chastened, learned to fear dishonesty as much as dragons. The Maesters of the Citadel remembered the Quill of Light and his long untangling of secrets, and young acolytes vied to claim the title for themselves, not for fame, but for the quiet courage it took to speak and write the truth. And though the great lords of Westeros would always scheme, always whisper in dark corners, they did so now with the knowledge that somewhere, a watcher in gray robes stood ready, quill poised, to drag each new falsehood into the daylight. Even the smallest truth, Samwell knew, could change the world. And in the quiet heart of the Red Keep, as snow fell and the fire burned low, he dreamed of a future where no one, Lord Smallfolk or King, would ever again have to live in fear of a lie. Dundee, Dinsi. The months that followed the trial of Mathis Rowan were the slowest thaw of any Westeros had seen. Spring advanced, hesitating at each river bend and barrow, melting the hoarfrost from the bones of the land, even as old cruelties and old habits clung to the cold. Grand Maester Samwell Tarly saw it all from the high windows of the Red Keep. Ships unloading honest grain at the quays, rag pickers and seamstresses crowding the markets, gold cloaks walking in twos, as if expecting riot at every turn. There was no riot. There was change, the kind that arrives like the first crocus after a long winter. Tremulous, persistent, bright bee. He lived now not in the shadow of dread, but in its afterlight. He slept in Pacel's old rooms, stripped of false lenses and musty silks, their windows thrown open to let the wind from the Blackwater cleanse away dust. His books stood stacked in neat rows along every wall, from the treatises on northern governance to the ledgers of every king and queen since Aegon's conquest. The ledgers were fuller now, whole shelves devoted to new confessions, new truths, each page written and countersigned, every lie untangled and replaced with fact or honest ignorance. Sam understood now why the oldest chronicles of men were half empty. Truth was a labor, always in progress, never done. The morning after Rowan's exile, Sam rose to find the city transformed. For the first time since he'd arrived from Old Town as a novice, with fear in his belly and dreams in his satchel, he did not hear angry shouts or smell burning tar in the streets. Instead, bells chimed from the repaired Great Sept, calling the faithful to a new sermon. The small folk queued for bread and justice, unafraid of the gold cloaks, who watched with bored patience rather than club in hand. It seemed the sun had risen not just on the city, but on its memory, washing away years of grief and rot. The men and women in the market stalls stood straighter. The children running in the alleys no longer watched their backs. Still, the city was not free from rumor, nor from the wounds Sam had exposed. The Hightowers of Old Town fumed and blustered, but found themselves increasingly isolated. The Tyrell pretenders who had claimed regency during Garland's exile were called to account, their assets seized, their guards scattered. The faith militant, once a shadow army, shrank to a handful of trusted septons and healers, their zealotry replaced by quiet labor among the sick and the dying. And yet every day, Sam received letters, some full of gratitude, others of fury. More than one lord threatened retribution in the language of steel and coin. Sam kept those letters too. He understood the need to remember fear, lest it find a way to return. He filled his days with work. At dawn he rose, bathed, broke his fast with Gilly and little Sam, now a boy of 11, eager and curious, and then repaired to the council chambers. There he conferred with John, who sat the throne less and less often, preferring to rule from the gardens or the city walls. Sansa, often at Sam's left hand, guided policy with a queen's poise and a Northwoman's practicality. Brienne, commander of the Queen's Guard, presided over the royal guards, now more diverse than ever. Men and women, Westerosi and Summer Islanders, knights and commoners, each sworn to truth as much as to steel. Davos Seaworth and Gendry Baratheon administered the city's trade and repairs, while Tyrion Lannister, never content with merely being hand, overhauled the city's courts, bringing swift justice and sharper wit than King's Landing had known in a generation. Willa Manderly, grown into her mother's cleverness and her own restless ambition, took over much of Sam's correspondence and kept the ledgers as clean as any white cloak. For the first time in living memory, every great house, those that remained, sent an envoy, if not a family member, to court. Tormund Giantsbane presided over the wildlings, many of whom had settled on abandoned lands in the Gift, now officially recognized as freefolk. Arya Stark, seldom seen, sent ravens from far-off ports, each message a reminder that the world was wider than even Bran's dreams. Bran himself, king in name, Greenseer in fact, spent more and more time in the Godswood, and when he joined the council, it was with the deep, still wisdom of someone who had seen every lie and every truth in the roots of things. The council's days were long and full. Each new problem was met with the same insistence: that nothing be decided in secret. When the Lannisters of Casterly Rock demanded the return of lands lost during the war, Sam produced the old charters, showed the king's seal, and gently forced the envoys to accept what law, not custom, decreed. When the Iron Bank tried to raise interest on its outstanding loans, Davos and Tyrion negotiated a new settlement, one that ensured Westeros would pay its debts, but never again with wildfire or the blood of its small folk. But the work that mattered most was the quietest. Every morning, Sam met with a group of orphan boys and girls in the old Maegor's holdfast. There, with Gilly's patient help and little Sam's bright voice, he taught them their letters and numbers, the histories of kings and queens, the simple rights and laws of the realm. He taught them to question, to reason, to understand why a lord must answer for his actions, why the small folk matter as much as any knight. It was here that Sam felt most alive. When one of the girls, a coal merchant's daughter named Lya, wrote her first letter to her mother, Sam wept. Truth, he knew, did not march in banners or ring in trumpets. Truth whispered in candlelit corners, in the scratch of a quill, in a child's careful script. Not all were content. In Old Town, the Hightowers refused to come to King's Landing, but as summer stretched on, trade dried up and their bannermen drifted away, swayed by amnesty and the promise of fair trade. Sam continued to receive threats, a dagger and a box of oranges, a note written in blood promising the return of the old ways. He answered each with a public declaration of what had been sent, never allowing shadows to grow unchecked. Some lords grumbled, but the people, seeing these things in the open, found their fear replaced by an odd pride. Even the poorest fishmonger in King's Landing could point to the city walls and say, "Here the truth is written." One late summer afternoon, as the bells of the great sept rang a slow, peaceable hymn, a strange visitor arrived at the Red Keep. He was tall, spare, cloaked in robes that bore no color or sigil, his hair white as the sands of Dorne. His face was shadowed, his voice soft. He brought with him a letter, sealed with wax, but no mark. Sam received him in the old solar, with Gilly and Willa nearby. The stranger bowed, offered the letter. "I come from the Citadel," he said. "The Conclave requests your presence. There is unrest. They ask if you will return and set their house in order." Sam's heart fluttered. He had left the Citadel years ago, not in disgrace, but not in triumph either. He had not expected to be asked back. Gilly squeezed his hand. Willa's eyes gleamed with excitement. "You should go," she said. "You taught the realm what truth can do. The Citadel needs it too." Sam thought of the old archmaesters, the thousands of books, the lonely halls where knowledge sometimes went to die. He thought of the boys and girls he taught each morning, of the law clerks who now filed each judgment in public record, of the lives remade by honest words. He knew he could not stay in King's Landing forever. He would go, but not alone. He wrote a reply, then sent a raven to Sansa and Jon. That night, as the city cooled and a slow mist drifted from the river, the council convened. Sam explained quietly and without drama what was asked. "The conclave wishes to reform," he said, "but they do not know how. If I go, I will take Gilly and little Sam. Willa will remain here if you will have her, to keep the ledgers and the school." "Nay," Sansa smiled. "You must go, Sam. Old Town needs you more than King's Landing ever did." Jon clapped his shoulder. "Write often," he said. "And send me your best maesters. We'll keep the peace here." Tyrion added, "And come back for wine. Willa's too young to drink it all." Sam smiled, shy as ever but proud. "I will come back, and I will send all the truth I can." The next morning, he packed his books, kissed the girls in the school, and left the city at dawn. Gilly rode at his side, little Sam on a pony, their laughter trailing in the cool air. He looked back only once, to see the red keep shining in the new sun, banners snapping bright over the walls. And for the first time, Sam thought the city looked honest. Old Town was both older and younger than Sam remembered. The Hightower's walls stood proud, but their banners were faded, their halls strangely empty. The city bustled, but there was a wariness to its joy, a sense of a new wind blowing in from the Honeywine. The Citadel itself, its towers and domes, its miles of shadowed corridors, remained unchanged, but Sam felt the eyes of every novice, every maester, every gray-haired archmaester, as he walked the halls. They remembered him, the coward of Horn Hill, the slayer of a White Walker, the Grand Maester who exposed every noble lie. Now they looked at him with respect, and more than a little fear. He met with the conclave in the dome of gray glass, under the watchful eyes of statues older than Aegon's Landing. The archmaesters listened as Sam laid out his proposal. An open curriculum, where every student learned the laws of the realm alongside its histories. A public accounting of every major council decision. A new school for girls and small folk. Some resisted, fearing chaos or the loss of their ancient rights. But Sam argued with facts, with patience, with the gentle but unyielding logic that had tamed lords and soothed queens. He taught. He listened. He forgave. It was harder work than exposing lies, but more satisfying. By the year's end, a new tradition began. Each novice, before forging their first link, must write and present a truth. A fact about the realm, the Citadel, or themselves, that they had learned and never known before. The truth was then entered into the Great Chronicle, which Sam opened to the public. Within a generation, the Citadel became not just a place of learning, but a source of honesty in a world hungry for it. Years passed, and Samwell Tarly grew older and slower. Gilly's hair silvered. Little Sam grew into a man, tall and quick and gentle. Willa Manderley, now Maester Willa, sent long letters every fortnight from King's Landing, full of news and questions, and the laughter of her school children. Sansa's north blossomed. Jon ruled with a steady, quiet hand. Bran the Broken watched the land from within and without, silent, but always aware. In Old Town, as spring returned again and again, Sam taught his last class. Older now, voice soft, but his words still bright. He gathered the newest novices, boys and girls, noble born in common, and told them, there is no end to truth. You will never write the last word, nor reveal the final lie. But every truth you find, every lie you shed, builds a better world. That is your task. Not for lords, not for kings, for all the people. Nerd. When the class was done, Sam walked the long lamplit corridors back to his room, where Gilly waited with a pot of tea. They sat together in the window, looking out over the river, watching the sun dip below the masts and rooftops. Sam took her hand. "Do you ever think it was worth it?" he asked. She smiled, her eyes shining in the dusk. "Every page, Sam Doddle. Every word." They sat in peace, two old souls bound by memory and hope. When Grand Maester Samwell Tarley died, the bells of Old Town rang for a day and a night. Lords and small folk alike wept in every street. The Citadel scholars gathered to honor him, not just with eulogies, but by reading aloud from the Chronicle of Truth, the greatest work he had begun, and all the world had continued. In King's Landing, the Queen in the north and the hand of the King stood together in the school Sam had founded, sharing his story with a new generation. In the wild north, Jon Snow raised a glass in the Godswood and spoke Sam's name to the weirwoods. In every corner of Westeros, the schools and ledgers and laws he had shaped stood as quiet testimony. They called him the Quill of Light, but in the years to come, his legacy was simpler still. He had taught them not to fear the truth. That was all. And so the realm endured, not perfect, never easy, but honest. With every letter written, every story told, every ledger open to the sun, Samwell Tarley's work went on. The city he loved, the world he changed, slept peacefully under the stars, dreaming not of kings or dragons or wars, but of truth, patient, enduring, bright. Samwell Tarley's death did not mark the end of the truth's ascent in Westeros, but the beginning of a new and subtler reckoning, one that spanned cities and keeps, villages and market lanes. The realm he had helped knit together with candor did not fracture at his passing. Instead, it rippled with a quiet, restless energy, the way a deep lake shifts when wind teases its surface, sometimes calm, sometimes surging, but always moving towards something wider, something clear. In Old Town, the bells finally stilled. The Citadel's towers cast their long shadows over the Honeywine. Young and old alike lined the streets as Samwell's body was carried in simple procession. A bier of old pine, draped not in gold but in the faded blue cloak he'd worn as a novice. The conclave, every link gleaming, marched behind, followed by children and students from every corner of the city. Gilly and little Sam, grown now, walked at the head. Willa Manderly came from King's Landing, face set with loss and pride. No lords rode in armor, no banners cracked in the wind, and yet there was more dignity in that silence than in any tourney or royal wedding. The people threw handfuls of wildflowers, field poppies, cornflowers, even a few stubborn crocuses, their purple petals, a stubborn echo of Sam's first winter in the south. The Chronicle of Truth was placed at the foot of Samwell's bier, its vellum pages open to the passage he himself had written in his final year. It read, "Let there be nothing hidden in the record of this realm. Let the smallest injustice, the faintest error, the briefest kindness, all find a line within these pages. For a kingdom built upon truth may outlast fire, sword, and even time itself." That night, as Old Town sky faded to cobalt, and the lanterns burned low in the conclave's halls, Gilly sat with Willa and little Sam beside the great window, overlooking the river. Ships' lights winked in the distance, and the hush of water against pilings seemed to promise peace. "He was always afraid," Gilly murmured, voice low. "Afraid of his father, of battle, of failure. But he did every great thing he ever did because he was afraid, and because he knew what it meant to live that way." Willa nodded. "He taught me to doubt. He said truth never feared a question. That's why he made me finish the Chronicle." Little Sam rested his head on his mother's shoulder, taller now than she, yet with the same sweet openness in his gaze. "I thought when he died I'd feel empty, but I don't. I feel like there's still more to do, for him, for everyone." Gilly kissed his hair. "There is, love. There's always more to do." The next day, the conclave gathered in the dome of gray glass. 1,000 candles burned, their flames shivering in unseen currents, as the Archmaesters deliberated Samwell's successor. In the audience sat not only the usual sea of gray and brown, but a score of women, small folk, and even a wildling girl with bright red hair, a cohort Samwell had insisted upon opening the doors to those the citadel had ignored for centuries. Archmaester Runsell, old and sharp-eyed, addressed the chamber. Samwell Tarley leaves us a world changed, yet unfinished. The chronicle of truth cannot end with him. We must choose not only a grand maester, but the kind of realm we mean to serve. Now, he turned to the candidates. Among them stood Maester Willa Manderley, her chain incomplete but her record unblemished. Maester Edric, son of a stonemason, whose treatise on famine relief had become required reading in White Harbor. Maester Vaella Sand, born of the Dornish marches, whose studies in justice and poetry had brought her before judges and lords alike. After hours of debate, ballots and debate again, the decision was made. Willa Manderley was named Grand Maester. Young for the office, yet wise, relentless, and tempered by years in the shadow of Samwell's teachings. She accepted with humility, vowing not to surpass her predecessor, but to serve as he had, in the light and with clean hands. Her first act was to swear that the Chronicle would remain open and public. The second, to open new schools in Lannisport and Gulltown, so that learning might find even the forgotten corners of the realm. King's Landing awoke to news of Samwell's death with a sorrowful hush. The city's bells tolled in answer, and the great and small gathered in the square before the Red Keep to listen as Queen Sansa read aloud his last letter. Jon Snow, called from the north for the first time in a year, stood at her side, looking older but surer. "Dearest friends," Sansa read, her voice carrying across the cobbles and up the hill. "If you read these words, know I am gone. Yet, do not let sorrow weigh your hearts. We are all, in the end, stories in the world. Let ours be told true, and let the children born to peace know they may build a better realm for themselves, not because of kings or lords or even maesters, but because of the courage to question, the patience to listen, and the grace to forgive. That is all." "Nay, that's all." She paused, biting tears, then closed the parchment and let the silence say what words could not. Jon spoke only once, later that evening, to a small gathering in the Godswood. "Sam's truth made a king of me, though I never wanted a crown. It made us all better. I promise I'll never let it be forgotten. Namwendemde." So the years cycled, and the realm Samwell had midwifed into honesty grew stronger. In the north, Sansa's rule became legendary, her court a place of icy justice and warm laughter. The small folk called her the Hearth Queen, and even the lords who once despised her sang songs of her even hand. Brienne remained at Sansa's right, Lady Commander of the Queen's Guard, her word law in every keep from the neck to the last hearth. Gendry smiths in the capital fashioned not only swords but tools, plows, and windmills. Davos grew old, as steady as the tide, passing on his lore to the boys and girls of Flea Bottom who would never know the taste of starvation. Jon, never comfortable with power, kept his promise. He ruled quietly, then, when he grew weary, passed his seat to another, chosen by the council of the great and the small. His final years were spent in the north among the wildlings, teaching children to hunt and sing, to read the stars as much as the signs of spring. The chronicle of truth grew ever longer. In the borderlands, when bandits were caught or justice failed, men and women wrote letters to the citadel, and their complaints were logged and investigated by traveling justiciars, an order Samwell had conceived in his last years. Even in Dorne and the distant islands, whispers of this new order spread, and other kingdoms sent envoys to learn how peace might be brokered, not by secrecy or force, but by honesty and law. The citadel, once insular and slow, became restless. Its walls rang with the voices of new acolytes, girls and boys, high-born and humble. Some who had been sent away as children returned, not in shame, but to claim a new place among the links and tomes. Wildling children arrived, eager and wary, and found a home beneath the dome's colored glass. Decades passed. Samwell's memories softened with time, yet endured. On the anniversary of his death, a candle was placed in every window of Old Town, King's Landing, and Winterfell. The smallest child in each school recited the passage from the Chronicle. A kingdom built upon truth may outlast fire, sword, and even time itself. And as each year's snows melted, as each spring brought green to the fields and laughter to the rivers, there were always new stories. Of love, of loss, of honor and forgiveness. Each one chronicled, each one open to all. No lord dared erase his own mistakes from the ledgers, for he knew some child in the market, some girl in the school, some smith or steward would ask, "Is it true?" And the answer would be found, for the truth was no longer a thing to be feared. In time, the other kingdoms of the world sent their own children to the citadel, to learn not just the healing arts or the wisdom of the stars, but the peculiar, difficult craft of honesty. In the East, a council of city-states forged their own chronicle. In the Summer Isles, a library rose in Samwell's name, open to any traveler. In the West, even the Ironborn, chastened and weary of war, sent a Maester to each longhouse, that the truth might settle old feuds. In Winterfell's library, years after, little Sam, now called Samwell the Younger, read the Chronicle of Truth to his own students, gathered in the circle of the old gods' carved faces. He told them not of kings or dragons, but of a Maester who was afraid, and who became brave, and who changed the world not with sword or spell, but with words. One child, a wildling with hair the color of autumn, asked, "Was he ever king?" Samwell the Younger shook his head. He was never king. He never wanted to be. He wanted to be kind. He wanted to be honest. The child smiled. "That's harder than being king." "It is," Samwell agreed, "but it lasts longer." In King's Landing, the old school grew to fill a palace, its walls hung with banners of every house, no longer trophies, but reminders. In the evenings, children sat by lamplight, writing their truths in books that would join the chronicle, knowing that they too had a place in the record of the realm. So it was that Samwell Tarly's vision, a realm of questioning, of confession, of honesty, became as much a part of Westeros as the winter snows and the summer fields. The chronicle, now filling entire wings of the citadel and copied to every seat of learning, became the bedrock of peace. When disputes rose, they were settled by reason, by memory, by the cool logic of recorded truth. Even when new lies were told, they found daylight. Even when old hatreds flared, they were named and known, and thus, slowly, healed. The throne itself changed. Over generations, the Iron Throne was unseated, melted down to forge a ring of chairs, each for a voice of the realm. North, south, river, mountain, island, king, queen, and people. No one sat above the rest. All stood before the chronicle, read aloud at each session. Samwell's name faded from politics, but never from the hearts of those who valued peace. He became not legend, not myth, but memory, shared spoken, passed from teacher to child, from council to council, from city to village, as proof that fear can birth courage, and that one honest life can remake a kingdom. Long after dragons were dust and the last snows fell, the children of Westeros grew up believing that even the smallest quill might change the course of the world. And in the long hush between generations, when candles guttered low and wind sang through the towers, some swore they heard a gentle voice in the dark ask, "Learn, write, remember." It was never finished, the work, but it was never lost. And that was the truth. In the years after Samwell Tarly's passing, Westeros bore his mark as a tree bears the memory of a healing scar, tender, sometimes aching, but always alive. The children who'd once crowded at the windows of his Red Keep schoolhouse became men and women with voices, sharp minds, and questions no lord or maester could ignore. The citadel itself, long the storehouse of silent secrets, pulsed with a new and stubborn light. Not all the old shadows were banished, but they'd grown wary of places where the Chronicle of Truth cast its steady glow. Willa Manderly presided as Grand Maester, her silver chain bright with new-forged links, one of electrum for honesty, another of glass for transparency, and a rare red-gold strand for courage, the last created by her own hand, and worn by those who risked their standing for the good of the realm. She rose each morning to the echoing calls of students in the dome of gray glass, and the babble of voices in the public reading yard, where children and small folk, sailors and septas, could sit beneath canopies and listen to the reading of the day's confessions and discoveries. In King's Landing, Sansa Stark, the Hearth Queen, reigned into gentle maturity. Her court was a tapestry of color and laughter, yet it remained sharp as a knife's edge when justice was at stake. It was said that if a petitioner brought a grievance or a tangled lie, Sansa would summon the Chronicle and have the matter read aloud in front of all, so the city itself could witness the truth's unmasking. Lords grumbled, but soon even they saw the wisdom. Peace brought prosperity, and their coffers swelled even as their secrets thinned. Brienne of Tarth, gray at the temples but unbowed, was celebrated as Lady Commander. Her blue cloak and sword Oathkeeper became symbols for girls across the realm, none too small to bear armor, none too poor to stand for right. Once each year she journeyed north, riding to Winterfell to spar with Arya Stark, who still appeared from distant lands like a shadow with a face, a legend in her own right. Arya's tales of ships and foreign kings found their way into new editions of the Chronicle, thrilling the young and worrying the old. Little Sam, now Samwell the Younger, grew to manhood between the stacks of the Citadel and the snowy walks of Winterfell. He married a wise daughter of the wildlings, a woman with eyes sharp as a hawk's, and together they led a new school on the Wall's shadow, where the children of wildlings, free folk and kneelers alike, learned to read and write, to tend hearth and blade, and to tell the truth even when it hurt. Their eldest daughter, Gilly, named for her grandmother, would one day walk the long road south and forge her own chain, a promise that the work would never end. On each anniversary of Samwell Tarly's death, a candle was lit on every windowsill from the arbor to White Harbor. In the great sept, the faith, humbled and reformed, held a service not of mourning but of hope, reading aloud passages Sam had written. The gods see all, but it is men who must choose to witness. Let us witness, and let us remember. In the streets, the poor feasted on bread and onions, a tradition kept since the famine Sam had helped relieve. On the painted table at Dragonstone, a new passage was inscribed. A kingdom is not built of stone or iron, but of truth told and heard. Far across the sea, in Braavos, the Iron Bank had sent for envoys, seeking to learn the secret of Westeros' new stability. They found not sorcery or intrigue, but a city where contracts were registered in daylight, and oaths could be checked by any who cared to look. In Dorne, the Martells, at last, returned to peace, hosted open courts where disputes were read from the Chronicle, then settled beneath the shade of their lemon groves. In the Reach, the old Hightower banner still flew, but it flew beside the emblem of the Chronicle, a silver quill on a blue field. Lady Laena Hightower, the first of her house to take the glass link, returned the honey wine to commerce and opened Old Town's libraries to every house and every commoner. She wrote an annual letter to the Grand Maester, recording the city's births and deaths, marriages and disputes, and each letter was added to the Chronicle, so that no history would be lost to fire or pride. Gendry Baratheon, once a blacksmith, now Lord of Storm's End, sponsored scholarships for the children of his castle's staff. Each year he traveled to King's Landing for the Festival of the Quill, a 10-day celebration of learning, debate, and storytelling. The festival's closing contest was a reading from the Chronicle, and the winner, chosen by applause and wit, earned a silver link and a place in the Grand Maester's annual council. As for Tyrion Lannister, he lived to a fine old age. In his twilight years, he retired to a small villa outside Lannisport, where he wrote a history of the Age of Truth, as he called it, filling the margins with scandalous observations and the occasional poem. His correspondences with Willa Manderly became legend. Sometimes acrimonious, sometimes affectionate, always a contest of wit. Even in the Iron Islands, change came. The great lords, tired of the endless, fruitless wars, sent their sons and daughters to be fostered at Winterfell, where they learned to wield not only axes but ink and parchment. One iron-born girl, fierce and clever, would one day pen a treatise on sea law, so shrewd that the maesters made her a master of ships in the king's council. But peace, as Samwell once wrote, is never the absence of trouble, only the balance between trouble and hope. Not every year was free from turmoil. Crops failed. Droughts visited the southern valleys. Bandits arose and were put down. There were still murders and thefts, still lies whispered in the dark, still men and women hungry for power or revenge. Yet the difference was this: when a lie grew too large or a wound too deep, the realm had a way of seeing it, naming it, and, in time, healing it. Once, in the 8th year of Willa Manderley's Grand Maestership, a new conspiracy unfolded in the East. A coalition of old lords, unused to having their secrets questioned, attempted to bribe the keepers of the Chronicle, to falsify accounts and erase debts. The attempt was uncovered, not by a council or a king, but by 3 schoolchildren in Gulltown, who noticed missing pages in the local ledger. Their letter reached Willa, who ordered a full inquiry, and the lords were brought before the Chronicle to confess. In exchange for their admissions, they were fined and forced to sponsor new schools, a penalty that, over time, won them more favor than all their previous schemes. In the north, a brief rebellion broke out when a hedge knight claimed a distant Stark ancestry and tried to seize a holdfast. The local magistrate, a wildling who had married into House Reed, read the records, found the knight's story false, and persuaded even the man's own supporters to lay down arms. The knight was spared, and set to work as a teacher for the children of the holdfast. A kindness that did more to change his heart than a dozen executions. As the years passed, the Chronicle filled with such stories. Not only the great matters of lords and battles, but the daily truths of births and deaths, marriages and quarrels, forgiveness and change. A lord's son who renounced his inheritance to wed a commoner. A baker who led her district through a flood. A blind man who taught music in the street. Each entered the Chronicle, a single thread in a tapestry too wide for any one hand to hold. On the 30th anniversary of Samwell's death, his statue was unveiled in Old Town. It showed him not as a Grand Maester or a lord, but as a gentle, round-shouldered man seated at a desk. A child at his side, a quill poised over a blank sheet. The inscription read, "He wrote what others feared to speak, and built a realm that listened." At the dedication, Grand Maester Willa, white-haired now, but strong, read aloud from Samwell's Chronicle. By her side stood Sansa, her face lined with years, still the Hearth Queen. Brienne straight and bright-eyed as ever. Gendry gray and smiling. Arya, a traveler newly returned. And little Sam, Samwell the younger, who brought his own daughter, Gilly, to sit at his feet. Willa's voice echoed over the honey wine. "Let every child who learns to read, every lord who comes to council, every woman or man who faces injustice, let them know that truth is not the end of hope, but its beginning." The crowd, lords, small folk, wildlings, Dornish, Ironborn, even envoys from the east, stood in silent witness. That night, as Old Town glowed with candles and music drifted over the river, Willa sat alone in the Chronicle's great library. She opened the latest volume, inscribed the day's events, and left the final page blank, as Samwell had taught her. For tomorrow, she knew, there would be more to write. In the far north, on the wall of the school Samwell, the younger and his wife had built. The children gathered by the fire to listen to Gilly's stories. Sometimes they asked for tales of dragons, or of the Night King who had once threatened all life. More often they wanted to hear of Samwell Tarly. How he had been afraid. How he had never wanted to be a hero. How his greatest victory was not in battle, but in the unmasking of a single, hidden truth. On such a night, as the wind howled outside, and the fire crackled low, Gilly, third of that name, looked out at her students and asked, "Do you know why the Chronicle of Truth has never been closed?" A boy, red-cheeked and bold, guessed, "Because there are always new lies." She smiled. "Yes, and because there are always new truths, too. The world changes. So must the Chronicle." A girl with wildling braids added, "My father says you can't hide anything forever. The trees know. The wind knows. It's better to tell than to be caught." Gilly nodded. That is what Samwell believed. And so that is what we do. Every day. Nito. The children wrote their own stories that night. of lost sheep found, quarrels mended, promises kept. Each page was collected, and in the morning, Samwell the Younger rode south with a bundle of their truths to add to the chronicle in Old Town. There was no more Iron Throne. In time, the king's seat was remade into a round table, carved of weirwood and set with stones from each region, a symbol of the new realm. Sansa presided from the north, Arya from the seas, Gendry from the Stormlands, Willa from the Citadel, and others from every corner. The chronicle was read at every council, so no voice, great or small, went unheard. The last dragons were gone, but the old songs endured. Maesters, once timid in the face of change, became guides for new ages. The Chronicle of Truth grew too vast for any one place, so it was copied and shared, on ships in mountain holds, even in far-off markets, where the names of Tarly and Stark were spoken with respect and affection. And in the quiet hours before dawn, in Old Town and King's Landing, in Winterfell and Dorne and the islands beyond the Wall, the faithful and the curious alike would turn a page, light a candle, and write, "Here is what happened. Here is what I saw. Here is what I learned, what I lost, what I hope." So the Chronicle of Truth became not merely a book or a history, but the living, breathing soul of a people who had learned at last not to fear the light. The world spun on. Children grew, kingdoms changed. But in every corner of Westeros, Samwell Tarly's gentle courage endured, not as legend, but as daily habit. And where there had once been only lies, now truth blossomed, stubborn as crocus, bright as dawn. Okay, day. Nind. 100 years after the bells tolled for Grand Maester Samwell Tarly, the Chronicle of Truth had become the heart of Westeros, a living memory carried in ink and in the air, woven through each village green, every market, every castle and holdfast, from the icy north to the sunlit domes of Sunspear. In the Grand Library at Old Town, the first book Samwell had ever inscribed was now sealed beneath crystal, a relic so precious pilgrims journeyed from across the sea to gaze upon its faded script. The Chronicle itself, once a single tome, now filled thousands of shelves, each year's record copied and sent out in bundles on swift ships, in sturdy wagons, and by ravens whose flight was guided by truth as much as wind. The realm that Samwell and his friends had shaped was both older and newer than the world before it. It remembered. It changed. And while it did not know perfect peace, it had learned how to live with conflict, how to bend, but not break. When drought struck the Reach and the Ironborn raided the western coast, when storms battered White Harbor and harvests failed in the Vale, it was the Chronicle to which the people turned, not only to understand what had happened, but to see who had stood with them, who had faltered, who had mended, and who had wronged. The Chronicle gave voice to every wound and every healing, so no man or woman, lord or laborer, vanished into oblivion. From the Citadel's high window, Maester Miria Tissel watched the city stir. She was a small woman, sturdy, with a chain that glimmered with new forged links, glass for transparency, electrum for candor, steel for service, and one of red gold for courage, in memory of the first Grand Maester to wear it. Her hair, cropped short and unruly, blew in the morning breeze as she unlatched the shutters. Below, the river flashed silver in the dawn, the bells of the Seven ringing through fog. Miria's mornings began, always, by reading the day's newest pages. Letters from far-off archipelagos, reports of new schools in the summer islands, accounts of council meetings, victories, and heartbreak. The city bustled. A class of children crossing the Maester's Bridge, each carrying a copybook, a fishmonger bartering with a Bravusi trader for salt, a delegation from Lys entering the outer court, led by a woman in blue robes, her chain heavy with sapphires. Miria's task, as she saw it, was not to rule or command, but to witness and to gather, to ensure the Chronicle remained a living thing, never closed, never perfect, but always open to those who sought truth. She closed the window and made her way down to the great hall. There, a dozen scribes were already at work, quills scratching furiously as they copied reports. 3 fires in Gulltown, a great feast in Dorne, a strange comet sighted in the north. At the center table sat Maester Galen, her senior, poring over a treatise on navigation sent from the Summer Isles. Across the room, Maester Laris, a dark-haired woman with a smile for every child. Sorted petitions from the people. Complaints, confessions, celebrations. Myria joined them, accepting a cup of strong tea. "Anything from the wall?" she asked. Laris nodded. "A new school opens at Hardhome. The free folk send their stories twice a year now. There was a wolf sighted on the shore, white, larger than a horse." Myria smiled. "Send that to the Chronicle. Every legend begins somewhere." A scribe handed her a bundle of papers. Myria glanced through them. A marriage contract from Sunspear, an account of a flood in the Blackwater, a poem in High Valyrian penned by a girl in Dragonstone. She set aside the most urgent matters and motioned for the others to gather. "Read me the truth of the day," she said. They did. Each story, no matter how small, was entered into the record. Honor given to shepherd and lord alike. A dispute over a lost flock in the Reach. A midwife's account of a rare birth in the Westerlands. The closing of a gold mine in the Vale. When a tale arrived with no signature, it was marked anonymous, but its facts were checked, weighed, and if found honest, included. Falsehoods were not banished but annotated. So the Chronicle became not only a mirror of the world, but a map of its crooked paths as well as its straight ones. In King's Landing, the Festival of the Quill had grown into the greatest celebration of the year. The city filled with tents and laughter, scholars and merchants, poets and children, all drawn by the promise of new tales and old wisdom. The council that governed the realm gathered each spring, seated not on thrones but on simple wooden chairs arranged in a circle around the day's volume of the Chronicle. Here, every voice was heard. When the disputes of lords grew heated, it was often the Chronicle's youngest readers, students from the public schools, who offered the wisest counsel, for they remembered stories lords had forgotten, and questioned claims as Samwell once had, gently, but without fear. No iron throne stood in the Red Keep. Instead, a round table carved from weirwood, its surface etched with a map of the kingdom and the names of every known family, stood in the old throne room. Around it, envoys from north, south, east, and west convened. Some born noble, some not, some women, some men, a few who claimed both or neither. The old houses had learned to share power or faded into history, replaced by new lines who rose through service, wisdom, and, most of all, truth. When council met, the Chronicle was read aloud. If a vote divided, it was the Chronicle's testimony that broke the tie. Sometimes, the old hunger for secrets and power still flared. Once, a coalition of river lords tried to conceal a failed harvest by burning their ledgers and blaming the storm. The truth unraveled when a page from the local chronicle, saved by a clever child, revealed the false numbers. The council fined the lords but forgave them when they offered full account. The harvest was saved through gifts from the north and Dorne, and the story became a lesson told in schools. A lie breeds famine, but a truth sows plenty. Children grew up in a world where history was not a weapon, but a wellspring. Each autumn, the Chronicle's keepers traveled the land, visiting every village and hall to collect new stories, answer questions, and teach. The role of justiciar, once feared as the king's tax collector, became a post of honor. Men and women chosen for their fairness, patience, and wit, not for their swords. Every town elected one, and they sat in council with their lords, so that no judgment passed without the voice of the people. On the wall, little Sam's descendants kept the old school alive, tending wildlings and crows, bastards and noble sons, treating each as kin. The wall itself, no longer needed for defense, became a passageway for trade and learning. The old tunnels were lined with books, the courtyards alive with debate and music. When travelers from Essos crossed the far seas, they came to the wall first, where they were welcomed, fed, and asked to share a story for the Chronicle. In Dorne, Princess Baela, daughter of a line begun by Arya Stark and the Martell Prince, kept a library in the Water Gardens, its windows always open to sun and breeze. She composed her own history, a record not only of Dornish conquests, but of peacemaking, marriages, forgiveness, Every year she sent a bound volume north, so the chronicle could include tales of sand and sun. The Iron Islands, once feared, were now famous for their schools of navigation and trade. Their children, taught to read the wind and stars, learned also to keep honest account of every voyage. A fleet sailed each summer to bring news from far coasts, so the chronicle might record not only Westerosi truths, but those of distant lands. When a storm claimed a ship, the loss was mourned, but its log was preserved, and its final pages read aloud at the Quill Festival. And in Winterfell, where the old gods watched from their silent grove, the chronicle was read at every great feast. The children there learned to trace their lineage not by swords and crowns alone, but by the kindness and courage found in the chronicle's pages. On the rare days when the realm knew war, a feud between merchant leagues, a clash of ambitions in the mountains, it was the chronicle that brought peace. Accounts were checked, lies unmasked, and reparations made. The chronicle did not erase all pain, nor did it always prevent injustice, but it made such wounds visible, and in seeing, the realm could heal. One year, a stranger arrived in Old Town. She was tall and spare, with skin bronzed by sun, her accent lilting with the music of the summer isles. She carried with her a chest of parchment, tales and histories of her people, songs and judgments, even a recipe for honey cakes. She had walked from port to port, gathering stories, and had come now to place them in the chronicle. Maester Miria welcomed her, and they spoke long into the night, comparing customs, wisdom, and hopes for their children. In the morning, the stranger inscribed her own passage in the chronicle, in the tongue of her homeland. We are only as lost as our secrets are deep. May our truths be shallow, so all may drink. Deburs. Afterward, the chronicle began to grow outward, stretching new routes across the sea. Copies were sent to the Summer Isles, to Bravos, even to the distant ruins of Valyria, where scholars pieced together old stories and sent them home. On the centenary of Samwell Tarly's death, Old Town overflowed with visitors. The council sat in open session, and the chronicle, now filling an entire hall, was read aloud for a full day and night, a festival of voices. The descendants of Samwell's friends and foes alike stood together. Stark and Manderly, Tarly and Martell, Baratheon and Greyjoy, even a Lannister or two. The children, as always, were given the last word. One girl, black-haired, wild of eye, stepped forward to the great round table. She held a single page, crumpled and ink-stained. "My name is Lya," she said. "My mother's mother's mother learned to read because of Samwell Tarly. My father was a smith. My mother taught me to be kind. This is our story." She read, voice clear and proud, of hardship and triumph, of a family's struggle through drought and loss, and of how they found help and gave help in turn. When she finished, the hall was silent for a moment, then filled with applause, not only for her, but for all whose stories filled the chronicle. Maester Miria closed the great book and addressed the crowd. "The chronicle is not finished. It is not perfect. But it is ours, all of us, together. Let it remain open for every new truth, every new hope." Namnamenti. That night, as candles guttered and music drifted along the river, pilgrims and maesters, lords and commoners, lingered in the library. Some read aloud. Some simply sat in silence, touching the ancient pages, feeling the weight and lightness of memory. Somewhere in the quiet, a wind rose. It sang in the old glass and the tower stones, a song of beginnings and endings, of stories told and stories yet to come. So the chronicle endured, a living heart in the chest of Westeros, as steadfast and restless as the men and women who had dared to build it. And through storm and sun, war and peace, each new day dawned on a realm a little less afraid, a little more honest, a little more free. Truth, at last, was not a weapon, nor a secret to be feared, but the promise and the gift of a future always unfinished, always open, always written together.